The blizzard hit Boston like a wall of ice and fury, shutting down highways and sending everyone with common sense running for home. Everyone except Caleb Rowe, who sat alone in the ghostly silence of Sterling Tech's 20th floor, watching snow pile against the windows while spreadsheets blurred across his monitor. He'd told himself he was staying to finish the quarterly analytics report, but the truth was simpler and sadder. His daughter Mia was at her best friend's sleepover, and his empty apartment held nothing but the echo of her absence. He was reaching for his coat when he saw it, a sliver of light beneath the frosted glass of the corner office, the one everyone whispered about but never entered uninvited. The CEO's suite. And through that glass, barely visible, the silhouette of a woman with her head in her hands, shoulders shaking in a way that made his chest tighten with recognition. When Violet Sterling opened that door, mascara streaked and voice breaking as she whispered two words that would unravel everything. "Help me." Caleb stepped across a threshold he didn't know existed, into a life that wasn't his, and toward a truth neither of them was ready to face. If you want to see how a single decision in a snowstorm changes two broken people forever, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me tell you what happened next. The office after hours always felt like a museum to Caleb, a place where ambition was preserved in glass cases and corner offices, exhibited but untouchable. He'd worked at Sterling Tech for 4 years, long enough to know the rhythms of the building. The morning rush of engineers clutching oversized coffee cups, the midday hum of conference calls bleeding through supposedly soundproof walls, the evening exodus when everyone remembered they had lives waiting elsewhere. By 8 p.m., the 20th floor was supposed to be a ghost town. Caleb minimized his spreadsheet and rubbed his eyes. The numbers didn't matter anymore, not tonight, when Mia was sleeping under someone else's roof and his apartment felt too quiet to face. She was 8 now, all sharp questions and wilder hair, a miniature force of nature who'd inherited her mother's laugh and stubbornness. Sarah had been gone 3 years, and most days Caleb managed. Most days he packed lunches and checked homework and made it to bedtime without falling apart. But nights like this, when Mia was gone and the snow erased the city outside, the loneliness crept in through the cracks. He stood, shrugging into his coat, when he noticed the light. The corner office, Violet Sterling's domain, was supposed to be dark. The CEO didn't work late, at least not that anyone saw. She arrived before dawn and left by 6, a ghost in tailored suits who commanded the company with surgical precision and zero warmth. Caleb had seen her maybe a dozen times in 4 years, always from a distance, crossing the lobby with security in her wake, delivering quarterly addresses from a podium that might as well have been a throne, passing through the 20th floor like weather, inevitable, impersonal, gone before you could react. But tonight, the frosted glass of her office glowed with soft light, and through it, Caleb could make out a silhouette, a woman sitting at a desk, but not working. Her head was in her hands, shoulders curled inward in a posture he recognized too well. He'd sat exactly like that the night the hospital called, when the world ended and kept spinning anyway. She was crying. Caleb froze. Every instinct told him to leave, to grab his bag and disappear before she realized anyone had witnessed this unguarded moment. Violet Sterling didn't cry. She didn't crack. The entire company ran on the fiction of her invincibility, and shattering that illusion felt dangerous, like stumbling onto something sacred and forbidden. But he'd been on the other side of that door. He knew what it felt like to break in private, to hold it together for everyone watching and then shatter the moment you were alone. And he knew, with sudden certainty, that the worst thing he could do was walk away. He crossed the floor slowly, his footsteps muffled by expensive carpet. The snow fell harder outside, Boston vanishing into white noise. At her door, he hesitated. Then he knocked, soft, tentative, the kind of knock that said, "I see you and I'm sorry." The crying stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened. Violet Sterling stood there in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Caleb's monthly rent, but her makeup was ruined and her eyes were raw. Up close, she looked younger than he'd expected, maybe 35, maybe less, and utterly exhausted. Not the exhaustion of a long day, but the bone-deep weariness of someone who'd been holding up the sky for too long. "I thought everyone left." Her voice was hoarse, defensive. I should have, Caleb admitted. I just saw the light. She studied him with eyes that were pale gray, almost silver in the low light. You're Caleb Rowe, Product Analytics. He blinked. You know my name? I know everyone's name. She said it like it was obvious, like memorizing the identities of 300 employees was just another line item on her impossible to-do list. Then her composure cracked again, just slightly. You have a daughter, Mia. She's 8. How? You keep her drawings in your cubicle. Violet's smile was brief and bitter. I notice things. It's what I do. The silence stretched between them, awkward and electric. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Caleb should have made an excuse and left. Instead, he heard himself say, Are you okay? It was the wrong question, or maybe the right one. Violet's expression shuddered, then fractured completely. She turned away, walking back into her office, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. No, I'm really not. Caleb followed her inside without being invited. The corner office was beautiful in an austere way, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city being devoured by snow. Minimalist furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine, a desk so clean it might never have been used. There were no personal touches, no photos, no plants, nothing that suggested a human being actually occupied this space. Violet stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself. You're going to ask what's wrong. Only if you want to tell me, she laughed, sharp and humorless. I don't, but I need help, and you're here, and I'm out of options. She turned to face him, and the vulnerability in her expression was startling. I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend. Caleb stared. I'm sorry, what? There's a wedding tomorrow night. My cousin's getting married at some estate outside the city, and my entire family will be there, and they all think I'm... She faltered. They think I'm incapable of having a life outside this building. They think I'm too cold, too focused, too broken to ever let anyone in. And my ex-fiancé will be there, and my mother will be there, and I can't... Her voice cracked. I can't show up alone, not again. Ms. Sterling? Violet, please. She looked at him with desperate honesty. I know this is insane. I know you have no reason to help me, but I've spent the last 3 hours trying to think of anyone else I could ask, and there's no one. I don't have friends. I don't have a life. I have this company and a family that thinks I'm a failure because I chose ambition over a ring and a mortgage in the suburbs. Caleb's mind raced. This was insane. This was his boss, not just his boss, the CEO, asking him to participate in an elaborate lie for reasons he didn't fully understand. Every rational cell in his body screamed that he should politely decline and forget this conversation ever happened, but he'd been alone in the dark too. He knew what desperation looked like. Why me? Violet exhaled slowly. Because you're kind. I've watched you with people, the way you listen, the way you make the interns feel heard. Because you understand what it's like to be alone. And because, she gestured vaguely, you look the part. My family has very specific expectations, which are that anyone I date should be smart, successful, polished enough not to embarrass me. She grimaced. That sounds awful. I don't actually think that way, but they do, and you fit the profile. You're head of analytics, you're articulate, you clean up well. You could pass. Pass as what? Your boyfriend? My partner. Someone who chose me despite everything they've heard. Her voice dropped. Someone who sees past the Ice Queen act. Caleb crossed to the window, staring out at the storm. Somewhere in this blizzard, Mia was probably asleep, warm and safe at her best friend's house. Tomorrow she'd come home full of stories about movies and popcorn and staying up too late. She'd never know that her dad spent tonight being propositioned for the strangest favor of his life. One night? He asked. One wedding. Maybe 12 hours total. Violet's reflection appeared beside his in the glass. I'll make it worth your time. I'll pay you... Don't. The word came out harder than he intended. If I do this, it won't be for money. She went quiet. Then, carefully, why would you do it? Caleb thought about Sarah, about the last year of her life when she'd smiled through the pain because she didn't want Mia to be scared. He thought about the funeral, where everyone told him how strong he was while he felt like crumbling. He thought about every night since when he'd put on a brave face for his daughter while falling apart inside. Because pretending to be okay is exhausting, he said, and nobody should have to do it alone. Violet's breath hitched. For a moment, he thought she might cry again. Instead, she nodded once, sharp and decisive. Okay, thank you. What do I need to know? She moved to her desk, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. The wedding is tomorrow at 7. I'll pick you up at 5. That gives us time to drive to the venue and get our story straight. We've been dating for 4 months, met through work, but kept it quiet because of company policy. We're serious, but taking things slow because we both have complicated lives. You've met Mia. I adore her. We're talking about a future, but not rushing. You've really thought this through. I've had 3 hours and nothing else to think about. She typed rapidly. What's your address? I'll send a car. And your suit size. I'll have something delivered by noon tomorrow. I have suits. Not for this wedding, you don't. Trust me. Her smile was grim. My family judges everything, including hemlines and cufflinks. We need to be perfect. I'm really not a perfect kind of guy, Violet. Good. Neither am I. She looked up from her phone. That's the whole point. We're both pretending to be something we're not, just to survive the people who are supposed to love us most. The honesty in that statement hit Caleb like a physical blow. He watched her type his address into her phone, this powerful woman who ran a tech empire but couldn't face her own family without armor. And he realized that tomorrow night he'd be that armor. A human shield against judgment and expectation and the kind of casual cruelty that families inflicted without even noticing. What about your ex? Caleb asked. The one who'll be at the wedding. Violet's expression went cold. Gideon Cross. We were engaged 2 years ago. He's brilliant, successful, and convinced that I'm constitutionally incapable of putting another person first. He'll probably corner you at some point and warn you that I'll always choose work over love. She met Caleb's eyes. He's not entirely wrong, but that doesn't mean I want to hear it. What happened between you two? He proposed. I said yes. Then I spent 6 months trying to plan a wedding while running this company, and he spent 6 months resenting that the company kept winning my attention. Eventually, he gave me an ultimatum. Marry him and step back, or lose him. Her jaw tightened. I chose the company. He's been proving me wrong ever since. By showing up at family weddings? By being perfect. By finding balance. By dating someone age-appropriate and emotionally available and proving that the problem was always me, not him. She closed her phone. Your job tomorrow is to make him doubt that narrative. Just for one night. Caleb should have walked away. Should have called this what it was, a terrible idea born of desperation and loneliness. But he looked at Violet Sterling, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd armored herself so thoroughly that she'd forgotten how to be vulnerable. Someone who'd built walls so high that asking for help felt like jumping off a cliff. He knew that feeling too. Okay, he said. I'm in. The relief on her face was profound. Thank you. I'll text you the details. 5 p.m. tomorrow. And Caleb? She hesitated. If this is too much, if you change your mind, I'll understand. I know I'm asking something crazy. You are, he agreed, but I've done crazier things. I became a single dad at 28. This is just acting for 12 hours. Is that what your wife? She stopped herself. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Sarah, Caleb supplied quietly. Cancer. 3 years ago. And it's okay. Most people don't know what to say. Violet nodded slowly. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry you have to lie to your family to feel safe around them. The words hung between them, too honest, too raw. Then Violet did something unexpected. She smiled. Not the professional mask she wore in meetings, but something genuine and sad and grateful. We're a mess, aren't we? She said. Completely, Caleb agreed. But at least we're honest about it. He left her office 10 minutes later, stepping back into the snow-silent hallway with his head spinning. Tomorrow, he'd put on an expensive suit and pretend to be someone's boyfriend. Tomorrow, he'd walk into a world of wealth and judgment and play a role he'd never auditioned for. Tomorrow, He'd be the armor for a woman who'd forgotten how to ask for help. But tonight he'd done something simple and important. He'd seen someone in pain and chosen not to look away. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Caleb's phone buzzed with a text from Violet. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." He typed back, "See you at 5. Don't worry. I'm good at pretending everything's fine." Her response came immediately. "I know. That's why I asked you." Outside, the blizzard had transformed Boston into something beautiful and alien. Caleb walked to his car through snow that came up to his shins, his breath fogging in the frozen air. Somewhere in this storm, his daughter was sleeping safely. Somewhere in a corner office, Violet Sterling was probably still awake, planning every detail of tomorrow's performance. And somewhere between here and there, Caleb had agreed to step into a life that wasn't his, to be someone he wasn't for reasons he was only beginning to understand. The drive home was slow and treacherous, the city empty except for snowplows and the occasional taxi. Caleb's mind wouldn't stop racing. What did people talk about at weddings like this? What if someone asked him questions he couldn't answer? What if Violet's ex saw through the charade immediately? What if, beneath all the pretending, there was something real he wasn't ready to name? By the time he reached his apartment in Somerville, it was nearly midnight. The building was dark, his neighbors all asleep. Inside, Mia's drawings covered the refrigerator, princesses and dragons and stick-figure families that always included 3 people, never 2. Sarah's ghost lived in those drawings, in the photos Caleb couldn't bring himself to take down, in the empty space beside him in bed. He'd gotten used to the emptiness, learned to carry it like a familiar weight. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, that weight shifted slightly. Not gone, never gone, but different. Lighter somehow in the wake of Violet's desperate honesty. "Help me," she'd said. And he'd said yes. Caleb set his phone on the nightstand and lay down in the dark, listening to the storm rage outside. Tomorrow would be impossible. Tomorrow would require lies and performance and navigating a world he didn't belong to. Tomorrow, he'd pretend to be someone's perfect partner while his actual life waited in patient silence. But tonight, he'd connected with another broken person in the snow. And for reasons he couldn't explain, that felt like enough. His phone buzzed again around 1 a.m. Another text from Violet. "I can't sleep. Keep thinking I'm going to wake up, and you'll have realized this is insane and backed out." Caleb smiled in the dark and typed, "Still in. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll be brilliant liars together." Her response came quickly. "I'm usually a terrible liar, but I think with you, I might manage it." "Why?" The pause stretched so long Caleb thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "Because you're the first person in years who looked at me and saw someone worth helping. Not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, just someone who needed kindness." Caleb stared at those words for a long time. Then he wrote, "You are worth helping, and tomorrow will show your family exactly who you are. Someone strong enough to choose her own happiness. Even if that happiness is fake? Maybe it starts that way," Caleb typed. "But who knows where it ends?" The conversation died after that, both of them presumably trying to sleep. But Caleb lay awake until dawn, watching snow pile against his window and thinking about the woman in the corner office who'd asked a stranger for help because she had no one else to ask. He thought about Mia, who'd be home tomorrow afternoon with stories and laughter. He thought about Sarah, who'd want him to be happy again someday, even if he didn't know how. He thought about the suit that would arrive at noon, the car that would pick him up at 5, the wedding where he'd pretend to be someone's anchor while barely holding himself together. And he thought about Violet's voice when she'd whispered, "Help me," the raw need in those 2 words. Tomorrow, he'd help her. Tomorrow, they'd build a lie so convincing that maybe, just for 12 hours, they could both believe it was real. Tomorrow, Caleb Rowe would step into a different life. But tonight, in the safety of his own small apartment, he was just a single dad who'd said yes to a stranger's desperate plea. Just a widower who understood what it meant to smile through pain. Just a man who'd chosen, for reasons he couldn't fully explain, to be kind when walking away would have been easier. The snow fell. The city slept. And somewhere in the darkness, 2 broken people prepared for a performance that might change everything. Or might change nothing at all. Either way, they'd face it together. 2 strangers playing at intimacy, armed with nothing but borrowed confidence and the fragile hope that sometimes Pretending to be whole was the first step toward actually becoming it. Morning came gray and cold. Caleb woke to 17 missed calls from his mother and a text from Mia's friend's mom. Mia's asking when you're picking her up. She misses you. He smiled and texted back. 2:00. Tell her I miss her too. Then he showered, made coffee, and waited for the suit to arrive. It came at 11:30 in a garment bag with the Sterling Tech logo, accompanied by a note in precise handwriting. Trust me on the fit. See you at 5. V. The suit was perfect. Charcoal gray, impeccably tailored, probably worth more than his car. There were cufflinks, too, simple silver ones that caught the light. Caleb held them up to the window and wondered what kind of person wore cufflinks to a family wedding. The kind of person Violet Sterling would date, apparently. He picked up Mia at 2, listening to her chatter about the sleepover while mentally preparing for the evening ahead. She was so alive, so present, all wild curls and bright eyes and endless questions. Being her father was the only thing that had saved him after Sarah died. The only thing that made him get out of bed and function and remember what love felt like. Daddy, you're being weird, Mia announced, squinting at him suspiciously. Weird how? You keep smiling at nothing. She poked his arm. Did something good happen? Caleb thought about how to answer. I'm helping someone tonight, a friend from work. What kind of help? Complicated adult help. You'll stay with Grandma, and I'll be back late. Mia groaned. Grandma makes me eat vegetables. Vegetables are good for you. That's what she says, too. You're both wrong. But she grinned at him, gap-toothed and fearless, and Caleb's heart clenched with love so fierce it almost hurt. This was his life. This messy, beautiful, grief-touched life. And tonight, he'd step out of it briefly to help someone who needed armor against her own family's judgment. Then he'd come home to Mia, and everything would go back to normal. At 4:30, he dropped Mia at his mother's house and endured 20 minutes of interrogation about where he was going and with whom. It's just a work thing, he said, which was technically true. His mother, sharp-eyed and suspicious, studied his expensive suit. You don't wear cufflinks to work things, Caleb. I do tonight. Is she pretty? Caleb froze. What? Whoever this is for, is she pretty? He thought about Violet's pale gray eyes and the way she'd looked standing in her office, armor stripped away. Yeah, Mom, she's beautiful. But it's not like that. It never is, his mother said knowingly. Until suddenly it is. At 5 p.m. exactly, a black car pulled up outside Caleb's apartment. The driver was professional and silent, holding the door open while Caleb slid into the back seat. Violet was already there. She wore a deep burgundy dress that somehow looked elegant and severe at the same time, her hair pulled back in a way that emphasized her sharp cheekbones. Her makeup was flawless now, no trace of last night's tears. She looked every inch the CEO, polished, controlled, untouchable, but her hands were shaking. You came, she said quietly. I said I would. People say a lot of things. She studied him for a moment, taking in the suit. You look good, really good. So do you. The compliment seemed to surprise her. Thank you. I wasn't sure about the dress. My mother will hate it. She thinks burgundy is too aggressive for weddings, but I didn't want to wear something safe. Why not? Because safe hasn't gotten me anywhere. Violet met his eyes. Ready for this? Absolutely not, Caleb admitted. But I'm here anyway. Her smile was small and genuine. That might be the bravest thing anyone's ever said to me. As the car pulled away from the curb and into the Boston evening, Caleb felt the weight of what he'd agreed to settle over him. 12 hours. One wedding. A performance for an audience he'd never met, in service of a woman he barely knew. But Violet reached across the seat and took his hand, her grip tight with nerves, and Caleb realized something important. They were both terrified, and somehow that made it easier. Tell me about your family, he said as the city blurred past the windows. Violet's expression went carefully neutral. Where do I start? Anywhere that helps. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, my mother, Catherine, is a force of nature. She ran her own consulting firm for 30 years, retired at 60, and now spends her time judging everyone else's life choices. She wanted me to marry Gideon and give her grandchildren. When I didn't, she stopped pretending to be proud of me. And your father? Dead. Heart attack when I was 16. I think that's when my mother decided I needed to be perfect. Like if I succeeded enough, she could forgive the universe for taking him. Violet's voice was flat, clinical. My brother Julian is 32 and works in finance. He's married, has 2 kids, and does everything right according to the Sterling family playbook. He doesn't judge me as much as the others, but he doesn't defend me either. That must be lonely. It's fine, I'm used to it. But her hand tightened on Caleb's. The worst part is Gideon. He'll be there with his new girlfriend, some lawyer who's brilliant and balanced and everything I'm not. And he'll be kind about it, which is worse than cruelty. He'll introduce her and smile and prove that leaving me was the right choice. Maybe it was, Caleb said carefully, if he wanted someone different than who you are. Violet looked at him sharply. You think I'm too much. I think you're exactly enough. But if he couldn't see that, then you're better off without him. The words seemed to hit her hard. For a moment, Caleb thought he'd overstepped. Then Violet squeezed his hand and whispered, "Thank you." They spent the rest of the drive building their story. 4 months together. Met at a company event where Caleb asked an intelligent question about data privacy, and Violet actually answered instead of deflecting to her team. Coffee turned into dinner, turned into weekend walks with Mia. Slow and careful and real, or at least real enough to pass. By the time the car pulled up to the venue, a massive estate lit with thousands of tiny lights, snow making everything look like a fairy tale, Caleb almost believed the lie himself. Last chance to back out, Violet murmured as the driver opened the door. Not a chance. She smiled, stepped out into the cold, and transformed. The vulnerable woman from the car vanished, replaced by the CEO in armor. Caleb followed, offering his arm, and together they walked toward the lights and laughter and judgment waiting inside. Toward a performance that would test them both. Toward 12 hours of pretending that might somehow accidentally become real. The entrance hall of the Ashford estate was everything Caleb had feared, and nothing he was prepared for. Marble floors stretched beneath crystal chandeliers that threw fractured light across walls hung with oil paintings of people who looked like they'd been born judging others. Servers in crisp white shirts moved through the crowd, carrying champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Caleb's weekly grocery budget. Everyone here wore wealth like a second skin, effortless, casual, completely natural. Caleb had never felt more like an imposter in his life. Violet's grip on his arm tightened as they stepped inside, her posture going rigid. She smiled at someone across the room with the kind of warmth that didn't reach her eyes, and Caleb realized with sudden clarity that she was terrified, not of the wedding itself, but of the people in it, her own family. "There's my mother," Violet murmured, her voice dropping to something flat and careful. "The woman in navy by the staircase. Don't let her intimidate you. She feeds on fear." Catherine Sterling was a tall, angular woman who looked like she'd been carved from ice in disapproval. She wore a navy dress that was probably designer but looked severe enough to be a uniform, her silver hair swept back in a style that suggested she hadn't changed it in 30 years. When she spotted Violet, her expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession: surprise, calculation, and something that might have been satisfaction. "Violet," Catherine said, crossing the room with the kind of purposeful stride that parted crowds. "You're late." "The roads were terrible," Violet replied smoothly. "Mother, this is Caleb Rowe." "Caleb, my mother, Catherine Sterling." Caleb extended his hand. "Mrs. Sterling, it's a pleasure." Catherine's handshake was brief and assessing, her gaze traveling over him with the precision of an appraiser evaluating merchandise. "Rowe. I don't know that name. What do you do, Mr. Rowe?" "I work at Sterling Tech, head of product analytics." "Ah." The single syllable carried volumes of judgment. "So you work for my daughter." "With her," Caleb corrected gently. "Not for her." Catherine's eyebrows rose fractionally. Beside him, Violet's posture shifted, still tense, but perhaps slightly less rigid. "Caleb and I have been seeing each other for a few months," Violet said. "I wanted to wait until things were serious before introducing him to the family." "How prudent." Catherine's smile was sharp. And here I thought you'd given up on personal relationships entirely. Gideon will be so surprised. Violet's face remained perfectly composed, but Caleb felt her fingers dig into his arm. I'm sure he'll be thrilled for me. Oh, I doubt that. He's brought someone, lovely girl, a partner at Morrison and Foster. She clerked for a Supreme Court justice. Catherine glanced at Caleb. What did you study, Mr. Rowe? Computer science, state school. He smiled pleasantly. No Supreme Court clerkships, I'm afraid. How refreshingly honest. Catherine's tone suggested this was not actually a compliment. Well, I'm sure you'll find the evening educational. The Ashfords spare no expense for these events, though I suppose, she glanced at Violet, you're used to expensive things by now. Mother, I should greet the bride's parents. Do try to mingle, Violet. You have a tendency to lurk in corners at these things. Catherine swept away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and subtle cruelty. Caleb waited until she was out of earshot before speaking. Does she always talk to you like that? That was her being pleasant, Violet said quietly. She likes you, actually. She would have been much worse if she didn't. That was her liking me? She didn't mention my age, my lack of children, or my failure to marry Gideon. That's practically warm approval. Violet's smile was brittle. Come on, let's get drinks before someone else decides to evaluate your worth. They made their way to the bar, where Violet ordered a vodka martini and Caleb asked for whiskey. The bartender, a young man with practiced indifference, poured with the kind of precision that suggested he'd been doing this at events like these for years. You okay? Caleb asked, watching Violet drain half her martini in one go. Fine. Completely fine. She set the glass down with slightly too much force. Just remembering why I avoid these things. We can leave if... No. The word came out sharp. I'm not running. Not tonight. She took a breath, visibly steadying herself. Sorry, I don't usually drink like this. It's just... Being around her makes me feel like I'm 16 again, trying to convince her that getting into MIT early wasn't a waste of time because I should have been focusing on meeting the right kind of boy. She said that to you? Not in those words. She's too smart to be that obvious. Violet picked up her glass again, studying the clear liquid. She just made it very clear that professional success without personal success, meaning marriage and children, was hollow. That I could run a company worth billions and still be a disappointment because I couldn't keep Gideon interested. That's not fair. Fair has nothing to do with it. It's just how she thinks. Work is fine as a hobby, but real worth comes from being chosen by the right man. Violet's laugh was hollow, which is ironic considering she built her own consulting empire. But apparently those rules don't apply to me. Caleb wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the raw pain in her voice. But before he could speak, a man's voice cut through the conversation. Violet Sterling, as I live and breathe. Caleb turned to find a tall man in an impeccably tailored tuxedo approaching them with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having been told no. He was handsome in a classical way, strong jaw, perfect hair, the kind of symmetrical features that belonged on magazine covers. His smile was warm and genuine, and something about it immediately set Caleb on edge. Violet's entire body went rigid. Gideon? Gideon Cross stopped in front of them, his gaze moving from Violet to Caleb with undisguised curiosity. I heard a rumor you were bringing someone. I didn't quite believe it. He extended his hand to Caleb. Gideon Cross, old friend of Violet's. Caleb Rowe. He shook Gideon's hand, matching his grip. More than friends, I gather. Ancient history. Gideon's smile didn't waver. We were engaged once, but that was another lifetime. I'm with someone wonderful now. Melissa's around here somewhere, probably talking constitutional law with someone's grandfather. She has this way of making Supreme Court precedent sound like cocktail conversation. Sounds impressive, Caleb said neutrally. She is. Brilliant, balanced, the whole package. Gideon's attention shifted back to Violet. You look well, V. The company must be thriving. It is, Violet replied, her tone carefully neutral. Q4 projections are strong. Of course they are. You always did bleed Sterling Tech. His smile turned slightly sad. I'm glad you found someone who understands that. I tried, but I could never quite compete with quarterly earnings reports. The comment landed like a slap. Violet's expression didn't change, but Caleb felt her lean almost imperceptibly closer to him. He slipped his arm around her waist, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. Violet's work is important to her, Caleb said evenly. But so are the people in her life. She's very good at balancing both. Gideon's eyebrows rose. Is she? That's new. Maybe you just didn't stick around long enough to see it, Caleb replied, keeping his voice pleasant. Balance takes time to build. For the first time, Gideon's smile faltered. He studied Caleb with new interest, reassessing. How did you two meet? Company event, Violet said before Caleb could answer. Caleb asked an intelligent question about data privacy. I was impressed. By a question? By someone who understood the complexity of what we do. Violet's chin lifted slightly. Not everyone does. The implication hung in the air between them. Gideon's smile turned brittle. Well, I'm happy for you both. Really. You deserve someone who fits into your world, V. Someone who doesn't need you to choose. She doesn't have to choose, Caleb said quietly. That's not how healthy relationships work. Gideon looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he nodded slowly. You're right. It's not. He glanced at Violet. I hope this one works out better than we did. You deserve to be happy. He walked away before either of them could respond, disappearing into the crowd with the ease of someone who belonged. Violet exhaled slowly, her entire body sagging against Caleb. That was worse than I expected, she murmured. He still cares about you. He cares about being right, about proving that leaving me was justified. Violet finished her martini. Did you see how he made sure to mention Melissa's credentials? How balanced she is? That was for my benefit. Or his own, Caleb suggested. Maybe he's trying to convince himself he made the right choice. Violet looked at him sharply. You think he regrets it? I think he looked at you like someone who lost something valuable and is only now realizing it can't be replaced. Caleb paused. But I also think he's not wrong about one thing. What's that? You do deserve to be happy, and you deserve someone who doesn't make you choose between parts of yourself. Violet's eyes went bright with something that might have been tears. We should find our seats. The ceremony's starting soon. The ceremony took place in a conservatory that had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Thousands of white roses climbed trellises that framed floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-covered gardens. String lights twinkled overhead like captured stars. Chairs were arranged in neat rows facing an altar decorated with more flowers than Caleb had ever seen in one place. They found their assigned seats near the middle, close enough to be noticed, far enough to avoid immediate family scrutiny. Violet sat rigidly, her hands folded in her lap, scanning the crowd with the wariness of someone expecting attack. Breathe, Caleb murmured, covering her hand with his. I am breathing. You're holding your breath. I can see it. Violet exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping slightly. Sorry, I just keep waiting for something to go wrong. Like what? Like someone asking a question we can't answer, or Gideon pulling you aside to warn you about me, or my mother announcing to the entire wedding that I'm a fraud who can't maintain a relationship. She shook her head. I know it sounds paranoid. It sounds like experience. Caleb squeezed her hand. But we've got this. We know our story. We're good together. Anyone watching will see exactly what we want them to see. Which is? Two people who chose each other despite complicated lives. Two people who are taking things slow but serious. Two people who... He paused, then committed to the truth. Who see each other as human beings, not just roles to fill. Violet turned to look at him fully, her gray eyes searching his face. You're very good at this. At what? Lying? At making me believe it's not a lie. Before Caleb could respond, music swelled through the conservatory. The crowd rose as the bride appeared at the far end of the aisle, resplendent in layers of white silk. The ceremony began with all the traditional markers, readings about love, vows about forever, the exchange of rings that promise permanence. Caleb watched it unfold with a strange sense of disconnection. He'd stood at an altar once, promising Sarah forever. And then forever had been cut brutally short. Beside him, Violet's expression was unreadable. She watched the bride and groom with something that looked almost like longing, and Caleb wondered what she saw. The future she'd almost had with Gideon, the life her mother wanted for her, or something else entirely? When the officiant pronounced the couple married and they kissed to thunderous applause, Violet's hand tightened on Caleb's. He glanced at her and found her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You okay?" he whispered. "I'm fine," but her voice was thick, just emotional. "Weddings do that to me." Caleb suspected it was more complicated than that, but he didn't push. They filed out with the rest of the guests, moving toward the ballroom where the reception would be held. The Ashford estate had clearly spared no expense. The ballroom was enormous, with soaring ceilings and walls of windows that showcased the snowy grounds. Tables were dressed in ivory linens and gold accents, centerpieces overflowing with more roses. A band was setting up on a small stage at the far end. Their assigned table was mercifully free of immediate family. They were seated with what appeared to be college friends of the bride, young professionals who were pleasant and entirely uninterested in Violet's personal life. The conversation flowed easily through appetizers and wine, touching on careers and travel and the usual wedding small talk. Caleb was starting to relax when he spotted Violet's brother approaching their table. Julian Sterling looked like a softer version of his mother. Same sharp features, but with warmth in his eyes that Catherine lacked. He was tall and lean in a charcoal suit, his smile genuine as he clapped Caleb on the shoulder. "So you're the mysterious boyfriend," Julian said, pulling up a chair without being invited. Julian Sterling, Violet's infinitely more charming younger brother. "By 2 minutes," Violet said dryly. "We're twins." Caleb blinked. "You didn't mention that." "It's not relevant." "Not relevant?" Julian laughed. "She's been competing with me since we shared a womb. Don't let her tell you otherwise." "I don't compete with you, Jules. I just consistently outperform you." "See?" Julian grinned at Caleb. "She's delightful. I don't know how you stand it." Despite himself, Caleb smiled. There was an ease between the siblings that surprised him, a warmth that suggested whatever judgment Violet faced from her mother, her brother was exempt from participating. "Caleb Rowe," he said, shaking Julian's hand, "and I stand it just fine." "I'm sure you do. My sister doesn't date boring people." Julian's expression turned more serious. "I'm glad she brought you. She's been alone too long." "Jules, I'm not criticizing V. I'm just saying it's good to see you with someone." He looked at Caleb. "She's going to tell you she's fine on her own, and she is. But that doesn't mean she should have to be." Violet's expression softened. "Thank you, I think." "You're welcome. Now tell me, Caleb, how did you convince my workaholic sister to take a night off? Because I've been trying for years and never succeeded." "I didn't convince her of anything," Caleb replied honestly. "She invited me." Julian's eyebrows rose. "Did she now? That's character development." "I'm right here," Violet said. "Stop talking about me like I'm not." Sorry. Julian stood, squeezing her shoulder affectionately. "I should get back to my wife before she starts asking pointed questions about why I'm interrogating your boyfriend." "But Caleb? Take care of her. She acts tough, but she's not as invincible as she pretends." He walked away, leaving Violet staring after him with an expression Caleb couldn't quite read. "He's nice," Caleb ventured. "He is. He's also annoyingly perceptive." Violet picked up her wine glass. "He knows something's different tonight. He just hasn't figured out what yet." "Maybe he just sees you happy." "I'm not—" Violet stopped herself. "We're pretending, remember?" "I remember. But maybe the pretending is working better than you think." Before she could respond, the music started. The bride and groom took the floor for their first dance, swaying to something slow and romantic, while everyone watched and applauded. Then the floor opened up, and couples began joining them. Caleb stood, offering his hand. "Dance with me." Violet looked up at him with surprise. "You don't have to—" "I know, but people are watching, and it would look strange if we didn't." He kept his hand extended. "Besides, I'm actually a decent dancer." She took his hand, letting him lead her to the floor. He placed one hand at her waist, taking her other hand in his, and they began moving to the music. Violet was stiff at first, holding herself carefully, but gradually she relaxed into the rhythm. "See?" Caleb said softly. Not so bad. I hate dancing at weddings. Everyone watches. Let them watch. They'll see exactly what we want them to see. Which is? Two people who fit together. He pulled her slightly closer. Two people who aren't afraid to be seen. Violet's breath hitched. For a moment, they just moved together in silence, the music wrapping around them. Up close, Caleb could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that reminded him of winter gardens. He could feel the tension in her shoulders, the careful control she maintained even now. "You can relax," he murmured. "I've got you." "That's what I'm afraid of," Violet whispered back, but her body softened against his, her head coming to rest briefly on his shoulder. They danced through 2 songs, neither speaking, lost in the strange intimacy of pretending. When the music shifted to something faster, they returned to their table to find Catherine waiting. "Violet, darling, I need to borrow you for a moment," Catherine said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "Wedding photos. Family only." Violet glanced at Caleb, something almost apologetic in her expression. "I'll be right back." "Take your time," he said, though unease prickled at the back of his neck. He watched Violet follow her mother toward the conservatory, her posture going rigid again. Then he turned back to the table and found Gideon Cross sitting in Violet's abandoned seat. "Mr. Rowe," Gideon said pleasantly, "mind if we talk?" Every instinct Caleb had screamed danger, but he forced himself to smile. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Gideon leaned back, studying him with the kind of casual assessment that successful people use to evaluate threats. "How much has Violet told you about us?" "Enough to know you were engaged and it didn't work out." "Did she tell you why?" Caleb kept his expression neutral. "That's between you and her." "Fair enough. But since you're stepping into territory I used to occupy, I think you deserve to know what you're getting into." Gideon's smile was sad but sincere. "Violet is brilliant. She's also incapable of putting anything ahead of sterling tech. I learned that the hard way. Maybe she just couldn't put anything ahead of someone who demanded she choose." Gideon's expression hardened. "I didn't demand anything unreasonable. I asked her to make space for a life outside work, to consider that maybe running a company 24/7 wasn't sustainable, to think about what she wanted beyond quarterly earnings. And when she said the company was what she wanted, I realized she wasn't lying, that she genuinely would rather spend 18-hour days in the office than come home to someone who loved her." Gideon shook his head. "I'm not saying that to hurt her. I'm saying it so you know what you're signing up for. Violet doesn't do balance. She does obsession, and everything else comes second." "People change," Caleb said quietly. "Do they? Or do they just get better at hiding who they really are?" Gideon stood. "I hope I'm wrong about her. I hope she's different with you. But when she starts missing dinners and canceling weekends and answering emails at 3 a.m., don't say I didn't warn you." He walked away, leaving Caleb alone with the uncomfortable weight of truth. Because Gideon wasn't wrong. Not entirely. Violet had said as much herself. She'd chosen the company over him, and she'd done it without hesitation. But that didn't mean she couldn't choose differently now, did it? Caleb's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Mia's asking when you're coming home. I told her late. She's drawing you pictures." He smiled despite the tension coiling in his chest and typed back, "Tell her I can't wait to see them. Love you both." When he looked up, Violet was crossing the ballroom toward him, her expression stormy. She dropped into her chair with less grace than usual, reaching immediately for her wine. "That bad?" Caleb asked. "She cornered me during photos to ask what my intentions are with you, as if I'm the one who needs to prove I'm serious." Violet drained her glass. She actually said, "Don't waste this one's time, Violet. He seems kind, and you have a tendency to destroy kind things." Jesus. "Yeah." Violet's laugh was bitter. "And the worst part? She's not wrong. I do destroy things. Relationships, mostly. Gideon wasn't my first failed engagement. He was just the most public." Caleb absorbed that information carefully. "What happened with the other one?" "His name was Marcus. We were together in grad school. Smart, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. He proposed right before I graduated with my MBA. I said yes." Violet stared at her empty glass. "Then I got the offer to join Sterling Tech's executive team. 26 years old, youngest VP in the company's history. Marcus wanted me to turn it down, said we should build something together, start our own company. When I chose Sterling instead, he gave me back the ring and told me I'd always love my career more than any person. Were you in love with him? I thought I was. But when he made me choose, I didn't hesitate. The company won. It always wins. She looked at Caleb with raw honesty. That's who I am. That's what Gideon knows and what my mother sees and what Marcus learned. I'm not good at putting people first. Or maybe, Caleb said slowly, you've never been with someone who didn't make you choose. Violet stared at him, stared at WhatsApp. That's generous. It's true. Both Marcus and Gideon wanted you to pick them over your work. But what if someone just wanted you to pick yourself? All of you, the ambitious part and the human part. What if someone saw the whole picture and didn't ask you to edit anything out? Is that what you see? I see someone who's been told her entire life that she has to choose between success and love, between being powerful and being lovable, and I think that's bullshit. Caleb leaned forward. You know what I see when I look at you? Someone who built something extraordinary because she refused to settle. Someone who walked away from people who wanted to make her smaller. That's not destroying things, Violet. That's protecting yourself. Her eyes went bright with tears. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not, but I know what it's like to have people tell you who you should be instead of seeing who you are. He thought about the months after Sarah died, when everyone had opinions about how he should grieve, when he should date again, how to raise Mia alone. And I know the people worth keeping are the ones who don't ask you to perform. Violet opened her mouth to respond, but froze. Caleb followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. Catherine was heading toward them again, and this time she had Gideon with her. This should be interesting, Violet murmured. Catherine arrived at their table with the bearing of a general approaching a battlefield. Gideon trailed behind her, looking uncomfortable but resigned. Violet, darling, Gideon was just telling me about a fascinating opportunity. I thought you should hear about it directly. Mother, this isn't the time. Nonsense. It's always the time for good opportunities. Catherine smiled with saccharine sweetness. Go ahead, Gideon. Gideon had the grace to look embarrassed. Catherine, I really don't think... Please, Catherine insisted. Violet should know about this. Gideon sighed, then addressed Violet directly. My firm is looking for a new chief strategy officer. It's a partnership track position, executive level, everything you'd want professionally. But the hours are reasonable, 40, maybe 50 a week. Work-life balance is actually built into the culture. I thought of you immediately. The silence at the table was deafening. Caleb watched Violet's face carefully, saw the flash of hurt before she locked it down. Is this really why you came over here? Violet's voice was dangerously calm. To offer me a job at my cousin's wedding? I'm offering you a chance at a real life, Gideon said quietly. A chance to be extraordinary without sacrificing everything else. With the right role, you could have both, the career and the relationship, the success and the balance. He's trying to help you, Violet, Catherine added. Surely you can see that. Violet stood slowly, her composure cracking at the edges. What I see is my ex-fiancé and my mother ambushing me with a job offer that implies everything I've built is worthless because I haven't also built a life they approve of. Her voice shook. What I see is both of you deciding that I need to be rescued from myself. V, that's not what this is, Gideon started. Then what is it? Because it feels a lot like you proving your point, that I can't have sterling tech in a relationship, that I need to choose differently if I want to be loved. Her eyes blazed. Well, congratulations. You've made your point. Again. She turned and walked away, heading toward the conservatory doors. Caleb stood to follow, but Catherine's hand shot out, gripping his arm. Let her go, Catherine said. She needs to cool down. With respect, Mrs. Sterling, I don't think that's true. Mr. Rowe, I've known my daughter for 35 years. She throws these little tantrums when she doesn't get her way. She'll calm down and realize we're trying to help. Caleb gently removed Catherine's hand from his arm. No, you're trying to control her. There's a difference. He looked at Gideon. And you're trying to prove you were right to leave. But all you're actually proving is that you both see her as a problem that needs fixing instead of a person making choices you don't understand. He walked away before either of them could respond, following Violet's path through the conservatory and out into the snowy night. He found her on a stone terrace overlooking the gardens, her arms wrapped around herself, shoulders shaking with either cold or tears or both. "Violet," he said softly. She didn't turn around. "You should go back inside. Enjoy the wedding. This isn't your fight." "Actually," Caleb said, moving to stand beside her, "I'm your boyfriend, remember? Your fights are my fights. That's how this works." Even when the fights are ridiculous? Even when my family treats me like a broken thing they can't fix?" Her voice cracked. "Even when they're probably right? They're not right." Caleb shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "They're scared." "Of what?" "That you don't need them. That you've built something so complete and powerful that their approval doesn't matter anymore." He paused. "And maybe that you're happy without the things they told you would make you happy." Violet laughed bitterly. "I'm not happy, Caleb. I'm standing at a wedding in the snow, crying because my ex-fiancé thinks I need saving and my mother agrees with him. Are you crying because they're right, or because they won't see you for who you actually are?" She turned to face him then, mascara streaking again, vulnerability written across every line of her face. "Who am I then? Because right now I have no idea." Caleb cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing away tears. "You're someone who built an empire because you refused to settle. You're someone brave enough to ask for help when you need it. You're someone who notices things, who remembers that I have a daughter and keeps her drawings in mind. You're someone who's been hurt by people who couldn't handle your strength, and you're still standing here trying to figure out how to be both powerful and human." "I don't know how to be both." "Then maybe we figure it out together." The words surprised him as much as her. Maybe that's what this is, not a performance, but practice. Two broken people learning how to be whole. Violet's breath caught. For a long moment they stood frozen in the snow, the sounds of the wedding muffled behind them. Then she rose on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't tentative or careful. It was desperate and real, tasting of salt and wine and something like hope. Caleb kissed her back without thinking, his hand sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. The cold disappeared. The wedding disappeared. Everything disappeared except the warmth of her mouth and the way she clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a shifting world. When they finally broke apart, breathing hard, Violet's eyes were wide with shock. "That wasn't fake," she whispered. "No," Caleb agreed, his heart hammering. "It wasn't." They stood there in the snow, the truth settling between them like fresh powder. Then a voice cut through the moment, sharp and knowing. Well, this is interesting." They turned to find Catherine standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Behind her, other guests were starting to notice the drama unfolding on the terrace. "Mother," Violet said, her voice steadier than Caleb expected. "I saw what you were doing." Catherine's smile was cold. "And I think it's time we all had a conversation about what's real and what's performance. Don't you?" The terrace suddenly felt smaller, colder, more exposed than it had moments before. Caleb's hand was still tangled in Violet's hair, her lipstick smudged across his mouth, and Catherine Sterling stood in the doorway like a judge, preparing to deliver a verdict. Behind her, faces began appearing, wedding guests drawn by the promise of drama, moths to a flame. Violet pulled away from Caleb, her expression shifting rapidly from shock to calculation to something that looked like defiance. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, smearing what remained of her carefully applied makeup, and turned to face her mother with her chin raised. "What conversation would that be, Mother?" Violet's voice was steady, almost dangerously so. Catherine stepped fully onto the terrace, her heels clicking against stone dusted with snow. The cold didn't seem to touch her. "The one where you explain why you brought a stranger to a family wedding and are now kissing him like a teenager who doesn't know she's being watched." "He's not a stranger. We've been together for months." "Have you?" Catherine's smile was razor thin. "Because I've been asking around, Violet. Your brother knew nothing about Mr. Rowe until tonight. Neither did any of your colleagues I spoke to. For someone you've supposedly been dating for 4 months, he seems remarkably invisible." Caleb felt his stomach drop. Beside him, Violet's breathing had gone shallow, her fingers clenching into fists. He could see the panic starting to creep into her eyes, the careful composure beginning to fracture. "We kept it private," Violet said, "because of exactly this. Because I knew the moment I brought someone home, you'd find a way to pick it apart. Or because there's nothing to pick apart." Catherine's gaze shifted to Caleb, assessing and cold. "Tell me, Mr. Rowe, when exactly did you meet my daughter? And please, don't insult my intelligence with the story about the company event. I've already checked with your department head. There haven't been any events in the last 6 months where the CEO would have mingled with mid-level analytics staff." The lie was falling apart. Caleb could feel it crumbling like sand between his fingers. Every instinct told him to deflect, to maintain the fiction, to protect Violet from whatever judgment was coming. But he looked at Catherine Sterling's knowing expression and realized the truth. She already knew. She'd known from the moment she saw them together. She'd just been waiting for them to admit it. "Mother, this is ridiculous," Violet started. "Is it?" Catherine cut her off. "Because what I think is ridiculous is my daughter being so desperate to appear normal that she'd hire someone to play boyfriend for the evening. That's what this is, isn't it? Some kind of arrangement." The words hung to the frozen air. Around them, the gathered guests had gone silent, absorbing every syllable. Caleb saw Julian pushing through the crowd, his face creased with concern. Behind him, Gideon wore an expression somewhere between vindication and sadness. "No," Caleb said clearly, surprising himself. "It's not an arrangement." Catherine's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" "It's not an arrangement," he repeated, meeting her gaze steadily. "Violet asked me to come with her tonight because she needed support. Because showing up alone to face people who judge her constantly felt impossible. And I said yes because I've been where she is, alone, exhausted, trying to hold it together while everyone around me has opinions about how I should live my life." "How noble," Catherine said dryly. "And the kissing? Was that support too?" "That was real." Caleb glanced at Violet, who was staring at him with wide eyes. "That wasn't part of any plan. That was just two people who understand each other finding something unexpected." "Something unexpected in the span of a single evening?" Catherine's laugh was sharp. "You'll forgive me if I find that hard to believe." "I don't care if you believe it or not." Caleb's voice was firm but not aggressive. "I care about Violet. And I care that she's surrounded by people who claim to love her but spend all their energy trying to change her into someone she's not." A ripple went through the crowd. Julian had reached the terrace now, his hand on his wife's arm as if to steady himself. "V?" he said quietly. "What's going on?" Violet looked at her brother, and something in her expression broke. "I'm sorry, Jules. I should have told you the truth. Caleb and I aren't really together. We just met last night. I asked him to come with me because I couldn't face another wedding alone. Couldn't face another round of judgment about my choices and my life and my inability to be what everyone wants me to be." The admission landed like a grenade. Several guests gasped. Catherine's expression shifted from knowing to triumphant. Gideon closed his eyes briefly, as if he'd hoped to be proven wrong. "There it is," Catherine said softly. "The truth. My daughter is so broken, so incapable of genuine connection that she had to manufacture a boyfriend rather than admit she's alone." "That's not what this is," Caleb said sharply. "Then what is it, Mr. Rowe? Enlighten us." He looked at Violet, at the way she was holding herself together through sheer force of will, and made a decision. "It's someone asking for help. It's someone being brave enough to admit they can't do everything alone. You're framing this like it's evidence of weakness, but I think it's the opposite. I think Violet is stronger than any of you because she knows her limits, and she's not afraid to reach out when she needs support." "By lying to her entire family?" Catherine's voice rose. "By dragging a stranger into our lives under false pretenses?" "I came willingly," Caleb countered. "And yes, the relationship was pretend when we arrived. But something shifted tonight. Something real happened between two people who are both tired of performing for audiences that will never be satisfied. So maybe the lie became truth. Maybe that's what you're actually angry about. That your daughter found something genuine despite your best efforts to convince her she's unlovable." The silence that followed was absolute. Catherine's face had gone pale, her composure finally cracking. Around them, the wedding guests watched with the rapt attention of people witnessing a car crash. Caleb felt Violet's hand slip into his, her grip tight and trembling. "You have no right to speak to me that way," Catherine said, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "You're right. I don't know you, but I know what I see. A woman who spent years tearing down her daughter instead of building her up. A woman who measures worth in marriages and grandchildren instead of accomplishments and courage. A woman who's so terrified of her daughter's independence that she'd rather watch her suffer than admit she might have chosen a different path and still be happy." "Caleb," Violet whispered, "you don't have to." "Yes, I do." He squeezed her hand. "Because someone needs to say it. Someone needs to tell your mother that she's wrong about you, that you're not broken or incapable or too cold. You're just someone who refuses to settle for anything less than extraordinary, and that scares the hell out of people who chose safety over passion." Julian stepped forward, his expression conflicted. "V, is that really how you feel? That we judge you?" Violet's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Jules. Every family dinner, every holiday, every wedding. I feel like I'm constantly being measured against some standard I'll never meet. Gideon's right there with his perfect girlfriend, and you've got your beautiful family, and Mother keeps reminding me that all my success means nothing because I'm alone. So yes, I lied. I brought someone I barely know because I was tired of feeling like a failure." "You're not a failure," Julian said immediately. "Then why does it feel that way every time I'm around all of you?" The question hung unanswered. Julian looked stricken, his wife's hand tightening on his arm. Even Gideon seemed affected, his perfect composure slipping. But Catherine just stood there, her expression hardening into something impenetrable. "This is exactly the problem," Catherine said coldly. "You make everything about you, Violet. Your feelings, your struggles, your impossible standards. It never occurs to you that maybe we want what's best for you. That maybe watching you work yourself to death while claiming you're happy is painful for those of us who love you." "Love me?" Violet's laugh was hollow. "You don't love me, Mother. You love the idea of who I could have been if I'd made different choices. You love the version of me who married Gideon and gave you grandchildren and proved that your way was the right way. But the actual me, the one standing here, you can barely tolerate her." "That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my work without following it up with a comment about my personal life? When was the last time you looked at me and seemed proud instead of disappointed?" Violet's voice cracked. "I built a company from nothing, Mother. I'm the youngest CEO in our industry. I've created jobs and innovation and value, and all you can see is that I did it without a ring on my finger." Catherine's composure finally shattered. "Because none of it matters if you're alone. Because I watch you pour everything into that company, and I see a woman who's going to wake up at 60 and realize she has nothing but money and regrets. I don't want that for you, Violet. I want you to have what I had with your father: partnership, family, love. I want you to have a life." "I have a life," Violet said quietly. "It just doesn't look like yours. And that's what you can't forgive." The truth of it seemed to hit Catherine like a physical blow. She took a step back, her hand going to her throat, as if she couldn't quite catch her breath. Behind her, the wedding guests had begun whispering among themselves, the drama too juicy to ignore. Gideon moved forward, his expression gentle. "V, maybe we should all take a breath. This isn't the time or place." "You don't get to mediate this," Violet cut him off. "You lost that right when you left, when you proved that loving me came with conditions I couldn't meet. That's not fair. You tried to change me. That's not the same as accepting me." Violet's gaze swept across the terrace, her mother, her ex, the gathered crowd, and something in her expression shifted from defensive to resolved. "I'm done apologizing for who I am. I'm done pretending that my choices are mistakes just because they don't match your expectations. I brought Caleb tonight because I thought I needed armor against all of you. But what I actually needed was someone to remind me that I don't need anyone's approval but my own." She turned to Caleb, and her eyes were bright with tears and something that looked like wonder. "You were right about all of it. I've spent so long trying to prove I'm not broken that I forgot to ask if the people calling me broken might just be wrong." "They are wrong," Caleb said firmly. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. We barely know each other. I know enough. He reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face. I know you cry in your office when you think no one's watching. I know you remember details about people you barely interact with because you care more than you let on. I know you asked a stranger for help because you were brave enough to admit you needed it. And I know that kiss wasn't pretend, Violet. Not for me. Her breath caught. It wasn't pretend for me either. Around them, the crowd had gone completely silent. Catherine looked like she might shatter. Julian was watching his sister with an expression caught between concern and hope. And Gideon stood perfectly still, his careful composure finally cracking into something that looked like genuine pain. This is insane, Gideon said, his voice rough. You've known him for 24 hours, V. You can't possibly what? Violet turned to face him fully. Can't possibly feel something real with someone who sees me clearly? Can't possibly connect with someone who doesn't need me to be different? You're right that we barely know each other. But in one night, Caleb has shown me more genuine acceptance than you managed in 2 years. The words landed like blows. Gideon flinched, his jaw tightening. I accepted you. I loved you exactly as you were. No, Violet said gently. You loved who you thought I could become. You loved the potential version of me who'd work less and need you more. But I was never going to be her, Gideon, and asking me to try was asking me to be someone else. I asked you to have balance. That's not the same thing. It is when balance means abandoning the things that make me who I am. She took a breath. I'm sorry it didn't work between us. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed. But I'm not sorry I chose myself. Gideon stared at her for a long moment, emotions flickering across his face too quickly to name. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. It was sad and genuine and achingly honest. You're right, he said quietly. I did want you to be different. I told myself I accepted you, but every time you chose work over dinner or a meeting over a weekend away, I resented it. I thought if you just tried harder, we could make it work. But you were trying, weren't you? You were trying to be two people at once, and it was killing you. Violet nodded, tears spilling over. I loved you, Gideon, but not enough to stop loving my work. And you deserved someone who could love you that much. Yeah, he agreed. I did. And so do you. He glanced at Caleb. I hope he's that person. I hope I'm wrong about you, Violet. I hope you can have both. He walked away then, disappearing back into the warmth of the ballroom. The watching crowd began to disperse, sensing the show was over, drawn back to champagne and cake and the safer drama of wedding speeches. Within moments, only Catherine, Julian, and his wife remained on the terrace with Violet and Caleb. Catherine looked older suddenly, the harsh lights making shadows under her eyes. You're really choosing this, she said, and it wasn't a question. Choosing what, Mother? The company? My independence? Happiness on my own terms? Violet's voice was steady now, the tears drying on her cheeks. Yes, I'm choosing all of it, and I'm done feeling guilty for that choice. Even if it means being alone? I'm not alone. Violet glanced at Caleb. I don't know what this is yet. Maybe it's just tonight. Maybe it's something more. But either way, I'm not the broken thing you think I am. I'm just someone who wants different things than you wanted. Catherine's expression was unreadable. For a long moment, she just stood there, the snow falling gently around her. Then she said something that shocked them all. You're so much like your father. Violet blinked. What? Your father. He was exactly like you. Ambitious, driven, incapable of doing anything halfway. He poured everything into his work, and I spent years resenting it, wishing he'd slow down, come home earlier, choose us over the office. Catherine's voice went soft. And then he died at his desk, and all I could think was that I'd spent our entire marriage wishing he was someone else instead of loving who he actually was. The confession hung in the cold air. Violet looked stricken. Mother, I don't want that for you, Catherine interrupted. I don't want you to pour your whole life into work and then leave nothing behind but regrets and an empire no one remembers. But you're right. That's my fear, not yours. And I've let it turn into judgment when what I should have been doing was trusting you to know your own heart. Are you apologizing? Violet's voice was barely a whisper. I'm trying to, Catherine's smile was tremulous. I'm not very good at it. I spent 30 years being certain I knew the right way to live, and watching you choose differently has been terrifying. But tonight, watching you defend yourself, watching you choose honesty over performance, I saw your father in you, and I realized that maybe the problem isn't your choices. Maybe it's my inability to accept them. Julian moved to his mother's side, his expression gentle. Mom, we should let them talk. This is between them. But Violet shook her head. No, Jules. You should hear this too. All of you should. She looked at each of them in turn. I've spent my entire adult life trying to prove I'm enough. Enough for the company, enough for partners who wanted different things, enough for a mother who measured worth in ways I couldn't achieve. And I'm exhausted. I'm so tired of performing and apologizing and defending choices that feel right to me, even if they look wrong to everyone else. Julian started. Let me finish, please. Violet's voice shook but didn't break. I don't know if I'll ever get married. I don't know if I'll have children. I don't know if I'll run Sterling Tech until I'm 70 or sell it tomorrow and do something completely different. But what I do know is that I'm done letting other people's expectations dictate my path. I'm done pretending I'm someone I'm not just to make family gatherings more comfortable. She turned to Catherine. I'm sorry I'm not the daughter you wanted. I'm sorry I can't give you grandchildren or Sunday dinners where we discuss my perfect marriage. But I'm not sorry I built something extraordinary. I'm not sorry I chose ambition. And I'm not sorry I showed up tonight with someone I barely know because it felt better than being alone. Catherine's eyes were wet. You were never supposed to apologize for being extraordinary, Violet. I just wanted you to be happy. I know, but your version of happiness isn't mine, and that's okay. It has to be okay, Mother, because I can't keep trying to be both people. I don't want you to. Catherine took a breath. I want you to be exactly who you are, even if I don't understand it, even if it scares me. The words seemed to crack something open in Violet. She made a sound that was half sob, half laugh, and suddenly she was moving toward her mother. Catherine caught her in an embrace that looked awkward and unpracticed, but genuine. They stood there in the snow, holding each other the way people do when apologies are too big for words. Julian joined them, wrapping his arms around both women, and for a moment the Sterling family looked like what they'd never quite managed to be. Present, honest, whole. Caleb stepped back, giving them space. This wasn't his moment. This was reconciliation happening in real time, years of judgment and hurt beginning to heal in the cold night air. He watched Violet's shoulders shake with sobs, watched Catherine stroke her daughter's hair with trembling hands, and felt something in his own chest loosen. After a few minutes, they broke apart. Violet's makeup was completely ruined now, her carefully constructed armor reduced to smears and tears. But she was smiling, really smiling, the kind of expression that transformed her face from beautiful to luminous. I should go, Catherine said softly. Your cousin will be wondering where all her guests disappeared to. But Violet, we'll talk, really talk, soon. I'd like that, Violet said. Catherine nodded, then turned to Caleb. Mr. Rowe, I owe you an apology. I was cruel earlier. You were protecting your daughter, Caleb said. I understand that. Perhaps. But I was also wrong about you, about this. She gestured between him and Violet. Whatever this becomes, I hope it's something real. My daughter deserves that. She walked back inside, Julian and his wife following after exchanging hugs with Violet. And then it was just the two of them on the terrace, the wedding sounds muffled by falling snow, the night stretching out in quiet possibility. Violet turned to Caleb, and her expression was raw and uncertain. I don't know what happens now. Neither do I, he admitted. We barely know each other. This whole night has been insane, Caleb supplied. Completely insane. But also maybe the most honest I've been with anyone since my wife died. Violet's expression softened. Tell me about her. About Sarah. Caleb leaned against the terrace railing, staring out at the snow-covered gardens. She was a teacher, 2nd grade. She loved her students more than anything except Mia. When she got sick, she kept working until she physically couldn't anymore. The doctors told her to rest, to save her strength, but she said those kids needed her. She sounds remarkable. She was. She was also stubborn and terrible at asking for help and convinced she could handle everything alone. He smiled sadly. Sound familiar? Violet moved to stand beside him. How long has it been? 3 years. Mia was 5 when Sarah died. Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days it feels like a different lifetime. He paused. I haven't dated anyone since. Haven't even thought about it. Mia's been my whole world, and work fills the rest. It's safer that way. Safer than what? Than letting someone in, than risking that kind of loss again. He looked at her. But tonight, with you, I remembered what it feels like to connect with someone, to be seen, and it terrifies me. Good, Violet said quietly, because it terrifies me too. I have no idea how to do this, how to be with someone without compartmentalizing it into a role I can manage, how to be vulnerable without feeling like I'm failing. Maybe we don't have to know. Maybe we just try. Caleb reached for her hand. Full disclosure, I'm a disaster. I work too much. I'm raising a kid alone, and I still have nightmares about hospitals. I'm not someone's prize catch. I'm a workaholic who's allergic to vulnerability and just had a public meltdown at my cousin's wedding, Violet countered. I think we're evenly matched in the disaster department. They looked at each other and suddenly they were both laughing, the kind of laughter that came from relief and absurdity and the strange miracle of finding someone who understood. When the laughter faded, Caleb pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist. So what do? He asked. I think we go back inside. Face whatever judgment is left. Dance one more dance. Violet smiled. And then maybe we see if this feeling survives past midnight. Like Cinderella. Exactly. Except instead of a glass slipper, you get to see if you still like me when I'm sleep-deprived and answering emails at 3 a.m. And you get to meet an 8-year-old who will interrogate you about everything and decide within 5 minutes if you're acceptable. Caleb's expression turned serious. I mean that, Violet. If this becomes real, Mia's part of it. She's been through enough loss. I won't introduce her to someone unless I'm sure. I understand, and I wouldn't expect anything else. Violet hesitated. I don't know how to be a stepmother. I don't even know how to be around kids. You don't have to be anything except yourself. If we try this, really try it, we figure it out as we go. No expectations, no performance, just honesty. I can do honesty, Violet said. Tonight proved that, if nothing else. They stood there a moment longer, the snow falling softly around them, the wedding continuing inside without them. Then Violet took Caleb's hand and led him back through the conservatory doors, back into the warmth and light and curious stares of people who'd witnessed the entire dramatic unraveling. The reception was winding down. The cake had been cut, the bouquet thrown, the formal dances completed. Guests were beginning to drift toward exits, calling for cars and gathering coats. Violet and Caleb slipped back to their table, where half-empty wine glasses and crumpled napkins told the story of an evening interrupted. One more dance? Caleb asked. Violet smiled. One more dance. They moved to the floor, just as the band started a slow song, something old and romantic that Caleb didn't recognize. But the melody was soft and sweet, and when Violet stepped into his arms, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. People are staring, she murmured. Let them. They're going to talk about this for years. The CEO, who brought a fake boyfriend and had a breakdown at her cousin's wedding. Or, Caleb said, they'll talk about the woman who was brave enough to tell the truth, even when it was terrifying, the woman who stood up to her family and chose herself. Violet looked up at him, and her eyes were soft. When did you become so good at this? At what? At making me believe I'm not broken. You're not broken, Caleb said firmly. You're just someone who's been told the wrong story about yourself for too long. But I see the real story, Violet, and it's extraordinary. She kissed him then, right there on the dance floor with half the wedding watching. It was slower this time, softer, tinged with promise instead of desperation. When they broke apart, Violet was smiling through tears. Take me home, she whispered. Where's home? Anywhere that's not here. They left the wedding hand in hand, walking through the grand entrance hall where they'd arrived hours ago as strangers performing a role. The valet brought the car around, the same black sedan that had carried them here. But everything felt different now. The air felt lighter. The future felt possible. As the car pulled away from the Ashford estate, Violet leaned her head on Caleb's shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly. "For tonight. For all of it. Thank you for asking me. For trusting me with this. Do you regret it? The whole insane plan?" Caleb thought about the question seriously. He thought about the lies and the confrontation and the kiss that had changed everything. He thought about Violet's vulnerability and Catherine's unexpected honesty and the way it felt to stand beside someone as they chose themselves. "No," he said finally. "I don't regret any of it. Do you?" "I regret the lying, but I don't regret where it led us." The drive back to the city felt longer than the trip out, the snow heavier now, turning the highway into a tunnel of white. The driver navigated carefully while Violet and Caleb sat in the back seat in a silence that felt both comfortable and charged. Caleb's hand rested on Violet's knee, her fingers interlaced with his, and neither of them seemed willing to break whatever spell the night had cast. The city emerged from the storm gradually, first scattered lights, then clusters of buildings, finally the familiar skyline of Boston rising against the dark sky. Caleb watched the streets pass and realized he had no idea where they were going. His apartment in Somerville? Violet's place, wherever that was. The office where this whole impossible night had started? "Where should I drop you?" the driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. Violet sat up slightly, her fingers tightening on Caleb's. "My place, the penthouse on Newbury Street. We can drop Caleb after." "You don't have to," Caleb started. "I want to talk. Really talk. Not in a car, not with an audience." She met his eyes. "Unless you need to get home to Mia. She's with my mother until tomorrow afternoon. I have time." The unspoken question hung between them. How much time? Just tonight? Longer? Caleb didn't know, and from the uncertainty in Violet's expression, neither did she. But they'd figure it out, somehow. The penthouse building was exactly what Caleb expected. Sleek glass and steel, a doorman who nodded respectfully at Violet, an elevator that required a key card for the top floor. They rode up in silence, the tension building with each floor they climbed. By the time the doors opened directly into Violet's apartment, Caleb's heart was hammering. The space was stunning and impersonal in equal measure. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the snow making everything look soft and dreamlike. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral colors. Art hung on the walls, abstracts that probably cost more than Caleb made in a year. But there were no personal touches, no photos, no clutter, nothing that suggested someone actually lived here instead of just sleeping between 18-hour workdays. "It's beautiful," Caleb said, because it was, even if it felt hollow. "It's empty," Violet corrected, shrugging off her coat. "I know, my decorator kept asking what I wanted, and I had no idea how to answer, so she gave me this." She gestured vaguely at the pristine space. "Something that looks right for a CEO, but doesn't feel like home." "Where does feel like home?" "The office, honestly. My desk, my team, the problems I can actually solve." She kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. "Want something to drink? I have wine, whiskey, probably some very expensive scotch someone gave me that I've never opened." "Water's fine." She disappeared into the kitchen, which was all granite and stainless steel and looked like it had never been used. Caleb walked to the windows, staring out at Boston blanketed in white. Somewhere out there, Mia was sleeping safely at his mother's house. Somewhere out there, his real life was waiting for him to come back to it. But right now, he was here, in a world that wasn't his, with a woman he barely knew, on the edge of something that felt simultaneously inevitable and impossible. Violet returned with 2 glasses of water and a bottle of wine for herself. She poured a generous glass and took a long drink before speaking. "I don't know how to do this part." "What part?" "The part after. After the performance ends and we have to figure out if there's anything real underneath." She set her glass down carefully. "I meant what I said at the wedding. That kiss wasn't fake for me. But I also don't know what it means beyond tonight." "Neither do I," Caleb admitted. "I haven't done this since Sarah. Haven't wanted to. And now I'm standing in your apartment wondering how I got here and what happens next, and I'm completely lost." "We're both lost then," Violet smiled sadly. "That's something." It's a start. She moved to the couch, curling up in the corner with her wine. Caleb sat at the other end, maintaining space between them that felt both necessary and painful. They needed to talk, really talk, without the distraction of physical proximity. "Tell me what you're thinking," Violet said. "The truth. No performance." Caleb took a breath. "I'm thinking that I felt something tonight I haven't felt in years. Connection. Understanding. The sense that someone actually sees me instead of just seeing the role I play. Single dad, widower, guy who has it together when he really doesn't. You looked at me in that office last night like I was a person, not a problem to solve or a box to check. And that felt important," Violet finished. "I know. I felt it too. You looked at me crying in my office and didn't flinch, didn't judge, just offered help without needing anything in return." "I needed something," Caleb corrected gently. "I needed to feel useful, to feel like I wasn't just going through the motions of my life waiting for the next thing to go wrong. Helping you reminded me that I can still connect with people, that not every relationship ends in loss." Violet's eyes went soft. "I'm terrified of that, the loss part. It's why I keep people at arm's length, why work is safer than relationships. If I don't let anyone in, they can't leave. But they also can't stay." "Exactly." She finished her wine, set the glass aside. "Gideon left because I wouldn't make space for him. Marcus left for the same reason. My mother spent years disappointed because I chose differently than she wanted. At some point, I decided it was easier to be alone than to keep failing at connection." "You're not failing, Violet. You're just connecting with people who want you to be someone else. That's not failure. That's incompatibility." "And us? What is this?" The question was simple and terrifying. Caleb looked at her, really looked, and saw someone as scared as he was. Someone who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable. Someone who desperately wanted connection but had no idea how to accept it without armor. "I don't know what this is," he said honestly, "but I know I don't want it to end at midnight. I know I want to see you again. Really see you. Not in some performance for your family, but in actual life. Coffee, dinner, conversations where we're just ourselves. What if you don't like who I actually am? What if the version you saw tonight, the vulnerable, honest version, isn't sustainable? What if day-to-day Violet is just the workaholic ice queen everyone says she is? Then I'll like that version too. Because I don't think you're an ice queen, Violet. I think you're someone who's been hurt enough that you protect yourself. And I understand that better than you might think." She studied him for a long moment. "You lost your wife. That kind of pain doesn't just disappear." "No, it doesn't. It changes shape, becomes something you carry instead of something that carries you. But it's always there." Caleb paused, weighing his words. "Sarah and I were happy, really happy. And when she got sick, watching her fade was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than the funeral, harder than explaining to Mia that Mommy wasn't coming home. Because every day, I had to watch someone I loved disappear and know I couldn't stop it." "How did you survive it?" "Mia. She needed me to be whole enough to take care of her, so I learned to fake it. Got really good at pretending everything was fine while falling apart inside. Sound familiar?" Violet's laugh was shaky. "Yeah, it does. The thing is, pretending eventually becomes habit. You do it so long you forget what it feels like to be real with someone. And then suddenly you're 3 years out, and you've built this whole life where you're functional but not actually living, just going through motions. And tonight changed that. Tonight reminded me what it feels like to be seen, to drop the performance and just exist as myself, messy, grieving, still figuring it out. You did that for me, Violet, whether you meant to or not." She moved closer, closing the distance between them on the couch. "I'm going to disappoint you. I'm going to work late and cancel plans and choose the company over dinner more times than you deserve. That's who I am." "Okay." "Okay?" She blinked. "That's it? Just okay? I'm going to have nights where I can't be available because Mia needs me. I'm going to have moments where grief hits out of nowhere and I shut down. I'm going to be a package deal, me and a kid who might not like you at first. That's who I am." Caleb took her hand. "So if we're cataloging our flaws and warning each other off, we're evenly matched." "You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying and complicated and probably a terrible idea, but I'm tired of safe, Violet. Safe means alone. Safe means going through the motions. And tonight, for the first time in 3 years, I felt alive. She kissed him then, soft and tentative, like she was testing whether the feeling from the terrace could survive without an audience. It could. It did. The kiss deepened, Violet's hand sliding into his hair, Caleb pulling her closer until there was no space between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Violet's eyes were wide. "This is real," she whispered. "Yeah, it is. I don't know how to do real. Neither do I, so we figure it out together. No expectations, no pressure, just honesty and patience and seeing where this goes." Violet rested her forehead against his. "I want that. I want to try." "Then we try." They sat there in the quiet of her empty apartment, holding each other like anchors in a storm. Outside, the snow fell softly over Boston. Inside, two broken people chose possibility over safety, connection over isolation, hope over the comfortable numbness they'd both been living in. Eventually, Violet pulled back, her expression turning practical. "It's late. You should probably get home." "Probably," Caleb agreed, making no move to leave. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. Well, today. In about 6 hours." "Of course you do," she smiled. "And you have to pick up Mia." "Yeah, my mother's going to have questions when she sees me in a tuxedo at 2 in the afternoon." "What will you tell her?" "The truth. That I went to a wedding, met someone extraordinary, and everything got complicated in the best possible way." Caleb stood, offering his hand. "Walk me out?" Violet took his hand, letting him pull her up. They moved to the elevator together, neither quite ready to say goodbye. When the doors opened, Caleb stepped inside but held them with his hand. "Have dinner with me," he said. "Tomorrow, or the next day. Whenever works. Something normal. No performances. No pretending." "I'd like that." "And then maybe, if it goes well, you could meet Mia. No pressure. Just coffee or something. Let her interrogate you and decide if you're acceptable." Violet's smile was nervous. "What if she doesn't like me?" "Then we'll deal with it." "But I think she will. She's good at seeing through pretense, and you're terrible at maintaining it." "Is that a compliment?" "Absolutely." Caleb leaned forward, kissing her softly. "Text me when you're free. We'll figure out the details." "Caleb, thank you. For tonight. For everything. Thank you for asking me, for trusting me." The elevator doors started to close. Caleb let them, watching Violet's face until the last moment. Then he was descending through the building, back toward street level, back toward his real life. The doorman called him a car, and Caleb waited in the lobby watching snow accumulate on the streets. His phone buzzed. A text from Violet. "I'm already missing you. That's probably not a good sign." He smiled and typed back. "It's a terrible sign. Means we're both in trouble." Her response came quickly. "Good. I like trouble." The car arrived, and Caleb rode through the empty streets of Boston at 3 in the morning, his head spinning with everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, he'd been working late to avoid an empty apartment. Now he was leaving a penthouse after confessing feelings to a woman he'd known for a single night. It was insane. It was reckless. It was exactly what he needed. His apartment looked smaller and shabbier after Violet's sleek penthouse, but it felt like home in a way her place didn't. Mia's drawings, Sarah's photos, the comfortable clutter of actual life being lived. Caleb changed out of the expensive tuxedo and into sweatpants, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Violet. "I can't sleep. Keep thinking about whether you're real or if I imagined this whole night." Caleb called her. She answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey." Her voice was quiet, intimate. "Sorry. I know it's late. I couldn't sleep either." "What are we doing, Caleb? Really?" "I think we're trying, taking a chance on something unexpected and seeing where it leads. That terrifies me." "Me too, but I'd rather be terrified with you than numb and alone." She was quiet for a moment, then, "Tell me about Mia. What she's like, what she loves. I want to know." So Caleb talked. He told her about Mia's obsession with dragons, her terrible jokes, the way she asked impossible questions and demanded real answers. He told her about those hard days when Mia missed her mother, about the brilliant days when she was so full of life it hurt to watch. He told her about being a single parent, about the fear of getting it wrong, about the fierce love that made everything else fade in comparison. And Violet listened, really listened. She asked questions that showed she was paying attention, offered observations that were surprisingly insightful for someone who claimed not to know anything about kids. They talked until the sky started to lighten, until the snow stopped falling and Boston began waking up. "I should let you sleep," Violet finally said. "You have to function today." "So do you. 6-hour meeting, remember?" "I'll survive on coffee and spite. It's what I'm good at." Caleb smiled. "Text me when you're free for dinner." "And Violet?" "Yeah?" "Tonight was the best night I've had in 3 years. Whatever happens next, thank you for that." Her voice was thick when she answered. "Same. Good night, Caleb." "Good night." He fell asleep as the sun rose, his phone still in his hand, and dreamed of possibility. When he woke a few hours later, there were 3 texts from Violet. The first, sent at 7. "Still can't believe last night happened." The second, sent at 8. "Meeting is torture. Keep thinking about you instead of quarterly projections." The third, sent at 9. "Dinner tomorrow?" "I know a place. Quiet, good food, no family drama. I promise." Caleb smiled and texted back, "Tomorrow works. Pick me up at 7? Her response was immediate. "It's a date." He spent the rest of the morning cleaning his apartment and mentally preparing for his mother's inevitable interrogation. She'd know something had shifted the moment she saw him. Mothers always did. He picked up Mia at 2, enduring his mother's knowing looks and pointed questions about his evening. Mia bounced into his arms, chattering about the sleepover and showing him drawings of dragons and castles and what appeared to be a princess with very aggressive teeth. "This one's a warrior princess," Mia explained seriously. "She doesn't need rescuing. She rescues herself." "Smart princess," Caleb said, hugging her tight. "Daddy, you smell different, like fancy soap." His mother raised her eyebrows. Caleb ignored her. "I went to a wedding last night, very fancy." "Did you dance?" "I did, actually." "With who?" Mia's eyes went wide. "Did you dance with a lady?" "I did." "Was she pretty?" Caleb thought about Violet on that terrace, armor stripped away, choosing honesty over performance. "She was beautiful." "Are you going to see her again?" "Tomorrow night. We're having dinner." Mia considered this gravely. "Okay, but if she's mean to me, you can't see her anymore." "Deal, but I don't think she'll be mean. I think you'll like her." "We'll see," Mia said with all the skepticism of an 8-year-old who'd learned too young that people leave. "Grandma, can I have cookies?" His mother followed Caleb to the door while Mia raided the cookie jar. "You met someone," she said quietly. "Really met someone." "Maybe. It's new. Really new." "But real?" "Yeah, Mom, it's real." She hugged him tight. "Good. You deserve to be happy again, baby. You deserve to have more than just survival." "I'm terrified I'm going to screw it up." You probably will. Everyone does." She smiled. "But you'll also figure it out. That's what love is, screwing up and fixing it and choosing each other anyway." That evening, after Mia was in bed, Caleb's phone rang. Violet's name lit up the screen. "Hey," he answered. "Thought you'd be drowning in work." "I should be, but I keep getting distracted." She sounded tired but happy. "I just wanted to hear your voice. Make sure last night actually happened." "It happened, all of it." "Good, because I've been thinking—" A sound in the background interrupted her. Voices, professional and urgent. Violet sighed. "I have to go. Crisis with a vendor. But tomorrow, 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up." "Looking forward to it." "Caleb? I'm terrible at this, at relationships and vulnerability and all of it. If I mess up, then we'll figure it out. That's the deal, remember? Honesty and patience." "Honesty and patience," she repeated. "I can do that, I think." "You can. I'll see you tomorrow." "Tomorrow." The call ended. Caleb sat in the quiet of his apartment, Mia sleeping down the hall, the future uncertain but full of possibility. He thought about Violet in her empty penthouse, choosing work because it was safer than connection. He thought about himself in this small apartment, raising his daughter alone because it was easier than risking his heart again. And he realized they'd both been surviving instead of living, both hiding from the possibility of pain by avoiding the possibility of joy. But tonight had changed something fundamental. They'd chosen differently. They'd chosen to try. His phone buzzed one more time, a text from Violet. "Thank you for making me believe I deserve this, whatever this becomes." Caleb typed back, "You do deserve it. We both do. Now go solve your crisis. I'll be here tomorrow." Her response made him smile, counting on it. He fell asleep thinking about tomorrow, about dinner with a woman he barely knew but understood completely, about the terrifying and wonderful possibility of building something real from the ashes of pretense. Outside, Boston slept under fresh snow. Inside, Caleb Rowe dreamed of second chances. And across the city, in a penthouse that finally felt less empty, Violet Sterling did the same. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Caleb tried to focus on work, on the spreadsheets and data models that normally absorbed his attention, but his mind kept wandering to 7 o'clock. To Violet. To the impossible thing they were attempting, building something real from a foundation of pretense and desperation. Around 4, his phone buzzed with a text from Violet. "Small crisis at work, might be a few minutes late. Don't let that scare you off." He smiled and replied, "I've survived worse than a few minutes. Take your time." At 6:30, Caleb stood in front of his closet, trying to decide what to wear. Not the tuxedo, that belonged to a different version of last night. The performance version. Not his rattiest jeans. This mattered too much for complete casual. He settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt, something that felt like himself, but elevated. Mia appeared in his doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed dragon. "You look nervous." "I am nervous." "Why?" "It's just dinner." "It's dinner with someone important, someone I want to like me." Mia climbed onto his bed, watching him with those two perceptive eyes that saw everything. "Is she going to be my new mommy?" The question hit Caleb like a punch to the chest. He sat down beside her, choosing his words carefully. "No, baby, nobody's going to be your new mommy. Mommy was special, and nobody can replace her." "But this lady is special too." "Maybe. I don't know yet. We're still figuring it out." "Can I meet her?" Caleb hesitated. They'd talked about it, but the reality of introducing Mia to Violet felt enormous. "Would you want to?" "I want to know if she's nice, and if she likes dragons." Mia hugged her stuffed animal tighter. "And if she makes you smile like you used to, before Mommy got sick." His throat went tight. "I smile now." "Not the same. You smile because you're supposed to, not because you're happy. But yesterday when you came home, you smiled the real way, like something good happened." Children saw too much. Caleb pulled Mia close, breathing in the strawberry shampoo smell of her hair. "Something good did happen, and if things go well, you'll meet her soon. But I need to make sure first, okay? I need to make sure she's someone who'll be good for both of us." "Okay," Mia pulled back. "But if she doesn't like dragons, she's not allowed." "Deal." The doorbell rang at 7:15. Caleb's mother, who'd arrived an hour earlier to watch Mia, gave him an encouraging smile. "Go, have a good time. We'll be fine." Mia waved from the couch. "Don't be too late, Daddy." Caleb opened the door to find Violet standing there in jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked younger like this, less severe, more approachable, and absolutely terrified. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood there for a moment, suddenly awkward. Last night they'd been strangers pretending intimacy. Now they were something else. Two people trying to figure out if what they'd felt was real or just the product of heightened emotions and wedding champagne. "You look beautiful," Caleb said. Violet's smile was relieved. "You look good too. Ready?" "Yeah, let me just..." He turned back to his mother and Mia. "Be good for Grandma." "Always am," Mia called back, already absorbed in whatever cartoon was playing. The restaurant Violet chose was perfect. A small Italian place in the North End, cozy and warm with checkered tablecloths and candles flickering on every surface. They were seated in a corner booth, granted a measure of privacy from the other diners. I almost canceled 3 times today, Violet admitted once they'd ordered wine. Why didn't you? Because I wanted to see you more than I wanted to protect myself. She smiled nervously. That's new for me. I almost called and suggested we postpone. Told myself we were moving too fast, that we should wait and let things cool down. What changed your mind? Mia asked if you were going to be her new mother, and I realized that if I let fear make my decisions, I'd teach her to do the same. That hiding from possibility isn't the same as being safe. Violet's eyes went soft. What did you tell her? That nobody could replace Sarah, but that sometimes good things happen when you're brave enough to try. Caleb paused. She wants to meet you, no pressure, but she's very insistent that any woman in my life has to like dragons. I can work with that. I don't know much about dragons, but I'm a fast learner. You don't have to. I want to, Violet interrupted. I'm terrified, but I want to. She's part of your life, which means she's part of this if this becomes something real. The wine arrived, giving them both a moment to collect themselves. Caleb took a sip and then dove into the deep end. So, real talk. What are we actually doing here? Violet laughed, the sound a little shaky. I have no idea. I spent all day trying to rationalize what happened at the wedding, telling myself it was just adrenaline and performance and the drama of the moment. But then I'd remember how you looked at me on that terrace, and none of the rationalizations worked. How did I look at you? Like you saw me. Not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, not the disappointment my mother sees. Just me, stripped down to the truth. And instead of being horrified, you stayed. Of course I stayed. Not everyone would have. Gideon didn't. He saw who I really was and decided it wasn't enough. She turned her wine glass in her hands. I've spent the last 24 hours waiting for you to do the same. To wake up and realize that the version of me you saw last night isn't sustainable. That day-to-day Violet is exactly the workaholic everyone says she is. Are you trying to talk me out of this? Maybe. Or maybe I'm testing to see if you'll let me. Caleb leaned forward. Here's the thing, Violet. I don't want some imaginary perfect version of you. I want the woman who cried in her office because she was exhausted from pretending. I want the woman who was brave enough to ask for help, even though it terrified her. I want the woman who stood up to her family and chose herself. That's who I saw last night. That's who I'm here for. What if I cancel plans because of work? What if I'm not good with Mia? What if I disappoint you? Then we'll deal with it. That's what people do, Violet. They mess up and forgive each other and keep trying. It's not about being perfect. It's about being honest. I don't know how to do that. How to be in a relationship without compartmentalizing it into something I can control. So we learned together. I haven't dated since Sarah died. I have no idea what I'm doing either. We're both making this up as we go. The food arrived. Pasta for Violet, chicken marsala for Caleb, and they ate in more comfortable silence. Violet told him about her day, about the vendor crisis that had nearly derailed a product launch, and Caleb found himself genuinely interested. Not because it was particularly exciting, but because watching her talk about her work revealed something essential about who she was. She came alive discussing strategy and problem solving, her eyes bright with engagement. You really love it, Caleb observed. The company, the work, all of it. I do. Is that wrong? Not even a little. But I think people in your life have made you feel like it is. Like loving your work means you're incapable of loving anything else. Violet set down her fork. Gideon used to say that I loved Sterling Tech more than I could ever love a person. Was he right? I don't know. I loved him, but not enough to give up who I am. Does that mean he was right, or does it mean I just hadn't met someone I loved enough? Or, Caleb suggested gently, it means he was asking you to choose between parts of yourself instead of accepting the whole package. Love shouldn't require amputation, Violet. It should make you more of who you are, not less. She stared at him. Where did you learn that? Sarah. She was a teacher who lived for her students. Early on, I resented it sometimes. Felt like she cared more about 25 second graders than she did about our relationship. And one night we had this huge fight about it. And she looked at me and said, "You fell in love with a teacher. That's who I am. If you need me to be someone else, you're in love with the wrong person." What did you say? That she was right, that I'd been asking her to edit herself to make space for my insecurity. After that, I stopped trying to change her and started supporting who she actually was. And our relationship got so much better. And then she got sick. Yeah, but loving her fully, supporting her work, celebrating who she was, that made the time we had matter more. I don't regret a single day of letting her be exactly herself. Violet's eyes were bright with tears. I want that. Someone who doesn't need me to be different, but I also don't know if I can give someone what they need. What if loving me means always coming second to Sterling Tech? What if it doesn't? What if loving you means being part of your world instead of competing with it? Caleb reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your company, Violet. I'm asking if there's room in your life for both. I don't know. I've never made room before. Then maybe we start small. Dinner once a week, phone calls when you're stressed, being honest about when work has to come first and when it can wait. He squeezed her hand. I have Mia. There will be nights I can't be available because she needs me. I'm okay with the same being true for you and Sterling Tech, as long as we're honest about it. You make it sound possible. It is possible. It's just hard, but worthwhile things usually are. They finished dinner talking about easier things, books they'd read, places they wanted to travel, embarrassing childhood stories. Violet told him about growing up as a twin, always compared to Julian, always feeling like she had to be twice as good to be noticed. Caleb told her about his parents' divorce, about choosing computer science because he was good with numbers, and they didn't require emotional intelligence he didn't have. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu they shared, the awkwardness had dissolved completely. They were just two people getting to know each other, the intensity of the wedding night settling into something quieter, but no less real. I should probably get you home, Violet said eventually. You have work tomorrow, and I have a 7 a.m. meeting. Of course you do. See? Workaholic, I warned you. And I'm still here. They drove back to Caleb's apartment through streets cleared of snow but still sparkling with ice. Violet parked outside his building but didn't turn off the engine. I had a good time tonight, she said. So did I. Can we do this again soon? Absolutely, but next time you should meet Mia. If you're ready. Violet took a deep breath. I'm terrified, but yes, I'm ready. This weekend, we could get coffee, go to the park if the weather's decent, something casual. Casual. I can do casual. She didn't sound convinced. Caleb leaned over and kissed her softly. You'll be great. And if you're not, we'll figure it out. That's the deal, remember? Honesty and patience. Exactly. He got out of the car, then turned back. Violet, thank you for tonight, for trying. Thank you for making me believe it's worth it. That Saturday, Caleb woke early with nerves that wouldn't settle. He told Mia she'd be meeting Violet today, and his daughter had spent the past 2 days planning her interrogation. She had a list of questions, most of them about dragons, but some disturbingly insightful for an 8-year-old. Does she make you happy? Mia had asked the night before. Like really happy? Not pretend happy? Yeah, baby. She makes me really happy. Then I'll like her. Probably. They met Violet at a coffee shop near the Common at 10. Caleb spotted her through the window, sitting at a corner table looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. She dressed carefully, jeans and a sweater, nothing too formal, but her hands were shaking as she stirred her coffee. That's her? Mia asked, peering through the window. That's her. She's pretty. She looks scared. She is scared. Meeting you is a big deal. Mia considered this gravely. Good. She should be scared. I'm very important. Inside, Violet stood when she saw them. Her smile was genuine but uncertain, her gaze dropping to Mia with something close to panic. Hi, Violet said. You must be Mia. Mia studied her with frank assessment. You must be the lady who makes my dad smile different. Violet blinked, then laughed. A real laugh, surprised and delighted. I guess I am. Is that okay? Depends. Do you like dragons? I don't know much about them, but I'd love to learn. Are you an expert? Obviously. Mia climbed into a chair, gesturing for Violet to sit across from her. I have 17 dragon books and 4 stuffed dragons, and I'm going to be a dragon scientist when I grow up. A dragon scientist sounds very serious. What does that involve? And just like that, they were talking. Caleb sat back and watched as his daughter explained dragon taxonomy and breathing fire, and the difference between European and Chinese dragons. Violet listened with genuine attention, asking questions that showed she was really engaged, not just humoring a child. "What's your favorite dragon?" Violet asked. "Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, because he's small but brave and he chose his person instead of being scary." "That's a good choice. I think I'd like a dragon who chose me too." Mia's expression turned serious. "My dad chose you. That means you have to be nice to him." "I plan to be. He's pretty great." "He is, but he's also sad sometimes, since my mom died. And I think you make him less sad." Violet's eyes went bright. "I hope so. He makes me less sad too." "Were you sad before?" "Yeah. I was lonely. I worked all the time and didn't have very many people who understood me." "And now you have my dad?" "Now I have your dad, if that's okay with you." Mia thought about it, drawing patterns in some spilled sugar on the table. Then she looked up at Violet with devastating directness. "Are you going to leave like people do?" The question hung in the air. Caleb started to intervene, but Violet held up a hand. "I don't want to," Violet said honestly, "but I can't promise I won't mess up sometimes. I might have to work late and miss things. I might not always know the right thing to say or do, but I promise I'll try really hard. And I promise to be honest with you and your dad about what I can and can't do. Is that okay?" Mia studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you hurt my dad, I'll be very mad." "That's fair. If I hurt your dad, you should be mad. He deserves better." "He does." Mia smiled suddenly. "Do you want to see my dragon drawings? I brought my folder." "I'd love to." They spent the next hour looking at Mia's elaborate drawings while drinking hot chocolate. Violet asked questions about each dragon's personality and abilities, treating Mia's explanations with the same seriousness she probably gave to board presentations. And Caleb watched them together, these two people he was starting to love, and felt something in his chest unclench. This could work. It was terrifying and uncertain, but it could work. As they left the coffee shop, Mia slipped her hand into Violet's. "You can come to my house sometime. If you want, I can show you my dragon collection." Violet's smile was radiant. "I'd really like that." That night after Mia was asleep, Violet called. "How did I do? Really?" "You were perfect. Mia told me she approves, which is high praise. She's amazing, Caleb. So smart and funny and brave. She gets that from her mother. And from you. You're raising an extraordinary human." Violet paused. "Thank you for letting me into this part of your life. I know it's not easy. Thank you for being brave enough to try. I know kids aren't your thing. Mia might be my thing. She asked me questions about algorithms and whether computers could think like dragons. I think we're going to be friends." "Good, because I'm falling for you, Violet. Fast and hard, and in ways that terrify me. And if this is going to work, you need to be part of all of it, including the 8-year-old dragon scientist." Silence. Then Violet's voice, thick with emotion. "I'm falling for you too. I didn't think I could. Didn't think I had room in my life for this. But somehow you and Mia are taking up all the space I thought belonged to work. And I'm not scared. Or I am scared, but I'm doing it anyway. That's all we can do. Be scared and do it anyway. Caleb, can I come over? I know it's late, but I just want to see you." "Always." She arrived 30 minutes later, still in the jeans and sweater from earlier. Caleb opened the door, and she walked straight into his arms, holding him tight like he might disappear. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing. Everything's right, and that terrifies me more than when things were wrong, because now I have something to lose." He pulled back to look at her. "You're not going to lose me. I'm not going anywhere." "You can't promise that. Sarah wasn't going anywhere either." The truth of that hit hard. "You're right. I can't promise forever. Nobody can. But I can promise today and tomorrow, and as many days after that as we get. I can promise to be honest and present and to fight for this even when it's hard. What if I mess up? What if work takes over and I forget to make space for you? Then I'll remind you, gently, and you'll remind me when grief hits and I shut down. That's how this works, Violet. We catch each other when we stumble. She kissed him then, desperate and deep, like she was trying to prove something to herself. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. I need to tell you something, she said. Gideon called me yesterday. He heard about the wedding, about everything that happened, and he asked if we could talk. Caleb's stomach tightened. What did he say? That he'd been wrong. That watching me choose myself over his expectations had made him realize he'd been asking for the wrong things. He said I looked happier defending my choices than I ever had trying to meet his. Is he right? Yeah, he is. I spent 2 years with him trying to be someone I wasn't. And I've spent 2 days with you feeling more like myself than I have in years. She met Caleb's eyes. He offered me that job again, the one from the wedding, said the position was still open if I wanted balance. Do you? No, because it's not actually balance. It's just a different cage. A place where I'd work less but also matter less. Where I'd have more time but less purpose. She took a breath. I turned him down, told him I was building my own version of balance, one where I don't have to choose between being extraordinary and being loved. What did he say? That he hoped I found it, and that he was sorry he couldn't be the person to give it to me. Violet's smile was sad. I think he meant it. I think he genuinely wants me to be happy, even if it's not with him. That's generous of him. It is, and it made me realize something. Everyone who's loved me has wanted me to be different, smaller, quieter, less ambitious. But you're the first person who looks at me and sees someone complete, someone who doesn't need fixing. Because you don't need fixing, Violet. You need someone who celebrates who you are. And that's you? I'm trying to be. She kissed him again, softer this time. I want to do this right. I want to make space for you and Mia without losing myself. I want to build something that doesn't require me to amputate parts of who I am. So let's do it. Let's figure out what balance actually looks like for us. Not Gideon's version or your mother's version. Ours. What does that look like? Caleb thought about it. Dinner once a week, guaranteed. No work emergencies unless the building's actually on fire. Phone calls when we miss each other. Honesty about when we need space and when we need connection. Meeting each other's needs without sacrificing ourselves. That sounds possible. It is possible. It just takes both of us choosing it every day. Violet settled against him on the couch, her head on his shoulder. Tell me more about Sarah. I want to know who she was. So Caleb talked. He told her about Sarah's laugh, her terrible singing voice, the way she made their small apartment feel like home. He told her about the hard parts too, the diagnosis, the treatment, watching someone he loved fade despite every medical intervention. He told her about the guilt of moving on, the fear that loving someone else meant betraying Sarah's memory. She'd want you to be happy, Violet said quietly. Wouldn't she? Yeah, she made me promise, actually, right near the end. Made me swear I wouldn't spend the rest of my life alone, that I'd let Mia see me fall in love again so she'd know it was okay to take risks. Do you think she'd approve of me? I think she'd see how you love your work and recognize a kindred spirit. I think she'd appreciate that you're honest about your limitations instead of pretending to be perfect. And I think she'd be grateful that you're brave enough to try this even though it scares you. I wish I could have met her. Me too. She would have liked you. Probably would have given you reading recommendations and asked impossible questions about technology and education. Caleb smiled. She was relentless when she cared about something. Like someone else I know. Exactly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the apartment quiet except for the occasional sound of Mia shifting in her sleep down the hall. Eventually, Violet sat up. I should go, let you sleep. But Caleb? She took his hand. Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, even though it's complicated. Thank you for letting me in, for being brave enough to try. She stood to leave, but Caleb pulled her back for one more kiss. Stay, he said impulsively. Not forever, just tonight. Fall asleep here. Let me make you breakfast in the morning." Violet's eyes went wide. "Are you sure?" "Completely sure. I want to wake up next to you, see what you look like before the armor goes back on." I snore, and I wake up early, and I'll probably check my email before I'm fully conscious. I don't care. Stay anyway. So she did. They fell asleep on the couch together, tangled up in each other, choosing presence over fear. And when Caleb woke just before dawn to find Violet still there, her hair messy and her defenses completely down, he felt something settle deep in his chest. This was real. This was happening. Two broken people choosing wholeness together. Violet stirred awake, blinking in the early light. "Morning." "Morning, sleep okay?" "Better than I have in months." She stretched, then froze. "Is Mia awake?" "Not yet. She sleeps until 7 on weekends." "Should I leave before she sees me? I don't want to confuse her." "Stay. Have breakfast with us. Let her see that you're part of this." Caleb brushed hair from her face. "Unless you're not ready." "I'm terrified, but I'm staying." They made coffee together, moving around Caleb's small kitchen with surprising ease. When Mia emerged at 7:15, rubbing sleep from her eyes, she stopped short at the sight of Violet at the table. "You stayed over?" Mia asked. "I did. Is that okay?" Mia thought about it. "Did you sleep in Daddy's room?" "We fell asleep on the couch." "That's okay then. You can stay for pancakes if you want." "I'd love to stay for pancakes." And just like that, they were a unit. Caleb made breakfast while Mia told Violet elaborate stories about her dreams. Violet listened and asked questions and slowly relaxed into the chaos of a Saturday morning with an 8-year-old. She helped set the table, laughed at Mia's jokes, and looked more at home in Caleb's cramped apartment than she probably did in her pristine penthouse. After breakfast, Mia dragged Violet to her room to show her the dragon collection. Caleb listened to their conversation through the wall, Mia explaining each dragon's backstory, Violet asking thoughtful questions, and felt his heart expand. This was what balance looked like. Not perfection, not some impossible standard, just presence, just showing up and trying and choosing each other. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "How's it going with the new lady?" He smiled and typed back, "Good, really good. She's having breakfast with us." The response was immediate. "Bring her by soon. I want to meet the woman who made my son smile again." When Violet emerged from Mia's room an hour later, she looked exhausted but happy. "Your daughter is a force of nature." "Yeah, she gets that from both parents." "She invited me to her school play next month, said I have to come because I'm your girlfriend now, and that's what girlfriends do." "Are you? My girlfriend?" Violet smiled. "I don't know. Am I?" Caleb pulled her close. "If you want to be." "I want to be, even though it terrifies me. Even though I have no idea how to do this." "Then we'll figure it out, one day at a time, one pancake breakfast at a time. One dragon story at a time." "Exactly." That afternoon, after Violet left for a meeting she couldn't avoid, Caleb sat with Mia on the couch. "So what do you think? About Violet?" Mia was quiet for a moment, curled up against his side. "I like her. She listens for real, not fake listening. And she makes you happy." "She does." "Is she going to stay, or is she going to leave like Mommy did?" Caleb's throat tightened. "Mommy didn't want to leave, baby. She got sick, and sometimes even when we fight really hard, we can't win." "I know, but people leave anyway, even when they don't want to." "That's true. And I can't promise Violet will stay forever. But I can tell you that she's trying really hard, that she cares about both of us, and that we're all choosing to be brave together." "Okay." Mia snuggled closer. "I hope she stays, Daddy. I like having her here." "Me too, baby. Me too." Over the next few weeks, they built a rhythm. Dinner on Wednesdays, always at the same Italian restaurant. Saturday mornings with Mia, alternating between parks and museums and lazy mornings at home. Sunday evenings when Violet had to work, understanding and acceptance instead of resentment. It wasn't perfect. There were nights when Violet had to cancel because of work emergencies, and Caleb felt the old familiar sting of coming second. There were moments when Caleb shut down because grief hit unexpectedly, and Violet didn't know how to reach him. But they talked through it. They apologized when they messed up. They showed up for each other even when it was hard. 6 weeks after the wedding, Catherine called Violet. Caleb was there when she answered, watching anxiety flash across her face. "Hi, Mother." He couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Violet's expression shift from defensive to surprised to something almost soft. "Really? You mean that?" A pause. "I'd like that. Yes, bring Jules and his family too. I'll check with Caleb about his schedule." Another pause. "He's right here. We're having dinner." Violet smiled. "Yes, Mother. It's serious, very serious." When she hung up, she looked dazed. "She wants to have dinner. All of us. You, me, Mia, Julian's family. She said she wants to get to know you properly, not as a performance, just as the person I'm choosing." "That's good, right?" "It's unexpected." She apologized, Caleb, really apologized. Said she'd been thinking about what I said at the wedding, and she wanted to do better. "Do you believe her?" "I think I want to try. The same way I'm trying with you. Being open to the possibility that people can change if they really want to." The dinner happened 2 weeks later. Catherine was still sharp and assessing, but there was warmth underneath that hadn't been there before. She asked Caleb about his work, about Mia, about how they were managing the complexities of blending their lives. And she listened to the answers, really listened, instead of waiting for opportunities to judge. When Mia proudly showed Catherine her dragon drawings, Catherine surprised everyone by admitting she'd collected dragons as a child too. "My father said they were symbols of strength," she told Mia, "that women needed to be like dragons, fierce and brave and unapologetic." "Like my dad's girlfriend," Mia said seriously. "She's fierce." Catherine looked at Violet, and something passed between them, understanding perhaps, or the beginning of forgiveness. "Yes," Catherine said. "She is." Julian pulled Caleb aside during dessert. "I don't know what you did to my sister, but thank you. She's different, lighter." "She did it herself. I just showed up." "You did more than that. You saw her when everyone else was busy trying to change her. That matters." 3 months after the wedding, Violet showed up at Caleb's apartment on a Tuesday night, unannounced and clearly agitated. Mia was at a friend's house, and Caleb had been working from home. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. Violet paced his small living room, energy crackling off her. "I got an offer today, a huge one. A tech giant wants to acquire Sterling Tech. They're offering an absurd amount of money and a position on their executive team." Caleb's stomach dropped. "Are you going to take it?" "That's just it. I don't know. 6 months ago, I would have said no immediately. Sterling Tech is mine. I built it. But now—" She stopped pacing. "Now I'm asking different questions, like what do I actually want? What would make me happy instead of just successful? What do you want? I want to build things. I want to solve problems. But I also want time. Time with you, time with Mia, time to actually live instead of just survive." She sat down heavily. "The acquiring company is offering better work-life balance, fewer hours, more support, real vacation time. All the things Gideon said I needed. But it means giving up control, giving up Sterling Tech, and I don't know if I can do that." Caleb sat beside her. "Do you need to decide right now?" "They want an answer in 2 weeks." "Okay, so let's think through it. What does keeping Sterling Tech give you?" "Control, purpose. The company I built from nothing, pride." "And what does it cost you?" Violet was quiet for a long moment. "Time, energy, the ability to be fully present for the people I love. My health, probably, if I keep working like this for another decade." "And the acquisition? What does that give you?" "Financial security beyond what I already have. A chance to build things on a bigger scale. And time. Actual time to have a life outside of work." "What does it cost?" "My identity. Sterling Tech is who I am. Without it, I don't know who I'd be." "You'd be Violet, the woman who built something extraordinary and was smart enough to know when to let it evolve." Caleb took her hand. "But I can't tell you what to do. This has to be your choice." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to be happy. If that means keeping Sterling Tech and us working around your schedule, I'm in. If it means selling and having more time together, I'm in. But you have to choose for yourself, not for me." "That's not helpful." "I know. But it's true. He pulled her close. You spent years being told what you should want. I'm not going to do the same thing. Whatever you choose, I'll support it. That's the deal. Violet buried her face in his shoulder. I love you. I don't think I've said that yet, but I do. I love you, and I love Mia, and I love the life we're building, and I'm terrified that choosing wrong will destroy it. I love you too, and you can't choose wrong if you choose honestly. If you keep Sterling Tech, we'll make it work. If you sell, we'll make that work too. The only wrong choice is the one you make because you think it's what I want instead of what you want. She pulled back to look at him. You really mean that? I really do. Over the next 2 weeks, Violet wrestled with the decision. She talked to her board, her brother, her mother. She talked to Caleb and even to Mia, who declared that Violet should do what makes her happy because that's what Mommy always said. In the end, she made a choice that surprised everyone. She sold Sterling Tech, but negotiated terms that kept her on as CEO for 2 more years to ensure a smooth transition. After that, she'd move to an advisory role with the parent company, still building things, still solving problems, but with actual boundaries and support. I'm terrified, she told Caleb the night she signed the papers. I've never not been all in on work. I don't know what it's like to have balance. So we'll figure it out together, one day at a time. What if I hate it? What if I need the chaos and intensity to feel alive? Then we'll deal with that too. But I think you might be surprised. I think you might discover that being present feels better than being busy. She was. Within months, Violet's life looked completely different. She still worked hard, still cared deeply about the company, but she had time. Time for Wednesday dinners that never got canceled. Time for Saturday mornings with Mia. Time to actually sleep. To read books that weren't about business strategy. To be something other than a CEO. And slowly, the penthouse started to feel less empty. Mia's drawings appeared on the refrigerator. Photos joined the abstract art on the walls. The space began looking like someone actually lived there instead of just sleeping between board meetings. A year after the wedding, Caleb found himself back in a tuxedo. But this time, it wasn't borrowed. This time, he was standing at an altar watching Violet walk toward him in a simple white dress, her mother crying genuine tears of happiness, Julian beaming beside her. They'd kept the wedding small, just family and close friends, nothing like the elaborate production where they'd met. Mia was the flower girl, taking her duties very seriously, scattering petals with solemn concentration. When Violet reached the altar, she was crying and smiling at the same time. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," Caleb whispered back. "Ready for this?" Absolutely terrified, but yes. The ceremony was short and honest. They wrote their own vows, promising not perfection, but presence. Not some imaginary ideal, but the messy reality of showing up for each other every day. Promising to choose each other, even when it was hard. To be honest, even when it hurt. To build a life that honored all of who they were instead of demanding they be less. When the officiant pronounced them married and Caleb kissed his wife for the first time, Mia cheered so loudly that everyone laughed. And in that moment, surrounded by people who loved them, Caleb realized something important. The wedding where they'd met had been about performance. This one was about truth, and the difference was everything. At the reception, Catherine pulled Caleb aside. "Thank you," she said simply, "for loving my daughter the way she deserves, for seeing who she really is. Thank you for raising someone extraordinary. I didn't do that. She did it herself despite my best efforts to make her someone different." Catherine's smile was sad but genuine. "I'm learning to celebrate that now. Better late than never." Later, during their first dance, Violet rested her head on Caleb's shoulder. "I can't believe we're here. A year ago, I was crying in my office, convinced I was too broken to be loved. And now? Now I know I was never broken, just waiting for someone who could see me clearly. I see you, Violet Sterling Rowe, all of you, and I'm not going anywhere. Good, because you're stuck with me, you and Mia both. There's nowhere else I'd rather be." They danced through several songs, oblivious to everyone watching. And when the music shifted to something faster, Mia ran onto the dance floor and demanded to join them. They danced as a family, Caleb and Violet and Mia, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. This was what they'd been building toward. Not perfection, but wholeness. Not some impossible standard, but the messy, beautiful reality of three people choosing each other every day. That night, after the wedding, after they'd said goodbye to guests and gotten Mia to bed at Caleb's mother's house, Violet and Caleb sat on her penthouse balcony watching snow fall over Boston. "Think we can do this?" Violet asked. "Build a life together? Navigate all the complications?" "I know we can. We already are." "What if I mess up? What if I fall back into old patterns?" "Then I'll remind you that you're more than your work, and you'll remind me when grief hits and I shut down. That's the deal, remember? One day at a time." "Exactly." Violet leaned into him, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the city transform under fresh snow. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed midnight. "We should make a plan," Violet said eventually. "Goals, timelines, steps to ensure we're building this right." Caleb laughed. "Of course you want a strategic plan for our marriage. Don't you? I have a plan. Wake up next to you, love you through whatever the day brings. Go to sleep grateful for what we have. Repeat." "That's not a plan. That's barely an outline." "It's the only plan that matters." He kissed the top of her head. "But if it makes you feel better, we can create a spreadsheet tomorrow." "You're mocking me." "I'm loving you. There's a difference." Violet smiled against his shoulder. "I love you too. So much it scares me." "Good scared or bad scared?" "Good scared. The kind that means something matters." "Then let's be scared together." They sat there until the snow stopped falling and the sky began to lighten with dawn. Two people who'd started as strangers became collaborators in a desperate lie and somehow found truth in the pretending. Two people who'd been told they were broken and proved everyone wrong by choosing wholeness together. And as the sun rose over Boston, Violet and Caleb made a silent promise to each other. Not to be perfect, but to be present. Not to have all the answers, but to face the questions together. Not to avoid fear, but to be brave enough to try anyway. One day at a time. One honest conversation at a time. One choice at a time. Building not the life anyone expected, but the life they actually wanted. Together.